Good afternoon. I want to start off by welcoming you to round one of the Regional High School Mock Trial Competition. It's an honor to have you appear in my virtual courtroom. At the offset, I just want to say that I can promise you a couple things. I could promise you that we're probably going to have some type of technology issue today. That having been said, I can promise you that if you do have an issue, we're going to figure out a way to resolve it, and we're going to make it fair for everybody. So I do ask, if anytime you do have any issue, make sure you contact us, whether it's through chat or through video, so that we know that there's an issue, so that nobody has any unfair advantages, okay? I will ask at the outset if both teams are ready to proceed to trial. Having not heard that anybody's not prepared to proceed, I'll go ahead and go through our official rules as we begin, and then I will turn it over and ask you to proceed. At the outset, I will ask that if there's anybody on here that our courtroom monitor has not caught who should not be here, I will ask you at this time to go ahead and leave this particular Zoom conference. This is limited, as we know, just to the teams. For the record, I will state that each scoring panelist has already stated that they have no reason to believe that they are biased or prejudiced against any of the teams, and are here and are okay judging all the people involved. I will remind all the teams that no recess will be allowed, with the exception if there's some type of health emergency. Again, if this does happen, please contact me through chat or through Zoom video so that we know there's an emergency. I will remind both teams that coaches and teams should know that any disputes arising out of the competition must be reported in accordance with the competition rules. I will remind both teams that your compliance with time requirements will be considered in scoring individual performances. At this time, unless there are any questions about those rules that I've stated, I will ask each side to introduce their participating team members. This includes both attorneys and witnesses. And I will go ahead and ask for the prosecution to go ahead and turn on your video and to turn on your microphones so that you may go ahead and begin by introducing yourselves to the scoring panelists.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Liam Slavin. I am an attorney for the prosecution. Detective conducting the cross.
Mr. Slavin, it looks like that you did, we might have lost you temporarily. It looks like you did go on to mute. So if that's something, you can try to unmute yourself and see if we can get you to, so we can actually hear you.
Can you hear me?
All right, you are breaking up, but go ahead and try again. Mr. Slavin, can you hear me now?
Your Honor, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Liam Slavin.
Mr. Slavin, if you can hear us, hopefully you're working on trying to get it resolved. If not, what we will do is we'll have you call in if necessary. So we'll give you just a minute. I will tell you that in case you can't see, if you can hear me, the courtroom monitor can be reached at 720-305-1468 for text. But I do see that you're going to go ahead and try to disconnect and reconnect.
Your Honor, can you hear me any better now?
I can. Right now it's coming in loud and clear. Thank you. Please go ahead and introduce yourself and your team if you may.
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Liam Slavin. I'm an attorney for the prosecution. I will be delivering the direct of Detective Jordan Markowitz and conducting the cross of Avery Becker, as well as delivering the closing statement.
Thank you. Any other members of the prosecution? And Mr. Branson, I see that you're trying to talk, but unfortunately, I cannot hear you.
Your Honor, I believe Kyle is having similar issues to me. He's going to attempt the same thing as me. But we can move on to the rest of our team if you'd like.
Thank you, Counselor.
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Mackenzie Dana, and I'm an attorney for the prosecution. Today, I will be delivering the opening statement. I will be directing Alex Cifuentes, and I will be crossing Professor Van Owen.
Thank you.
My name is Emily Bell, and I will be assuming the role of Detective Markowitz.
Your Honor, can you hear me now?
I can indeed. Thank you.
Perfect. Your Honor and ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Kyle Branson, and I'll be conducting the cross-examination for Mrs. Taylor Perkins and directing Mrs. Kyle Kuzak.
Thank you. Any other members of the prosecution who have not had a chance to introduce themselves?
Hello, Your Honor. My name is Grace Magsman. I will be the timekeeper for today's case.
Thank you for your help today. I appreciate it. Seeing nobody else, I will ask the defense if they would like to go ahead and introduce themselves to the panel.
Good afternoon, Your Honor and members of the jury. Can you hear me okay?
I can indeed.
All right. My name is Sumi Vora. I will be the attorney for Avery Becker, and I will be conducting cross-examination for Detective Markowitz, and I will also be delivering the opening statement.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Kopal Charasia. I will be directing Taylor Perkins and crossing Kyle Kuzak, and I will also be delivering the closing statement.
Thank you.
Hello, Your Honor, members of the jury. Can you hear me?
I can indeed.
Okay. My name is Alex Goen. I will be, and I'm an attorney. I will be directing Blake Van Owen, and I will be crossing Alex Cifuentes.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Can you hear me?
I can.
All right. I will be assuming the role of Avery Becker.
Thank you.
Your Honor and members of the jury, hello, can you hear me?
I can.
My name is Anushka Deshi, and today I will be assuming the role of Taylor Perkins.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. I hope you can hear me.
I can indeed.
My name is Annie McDonald, and I will be assuming the role of Professor Blake Van Owen.
Hello, Your Honor, members of the jury. Can you hear me?
I can.
I am Kaya Charasia, and I'll be assuming the role of timekeeper for defense this round.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have everybody. Is there anybody else who needs to introduce themselves who hasn't had a chance yet? Wonderful. What I will ask everybody to do at this time is
Sorry.
please.
Hello, honor and members of the jury. I wasn't able to get my audio working, but I'm Riley Plock and I'll be playing Kyle Kuzak for the Team BB.
Thank you very much. And I'm glad you seem to have your
Thank
audio
you.
working fine right now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I will ask
Hi,
everybody.
I'm Maura, and I'll
Oh,
be
one more.
singing-
Go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead, please.
sorry.
It's okay.
And I'll be Alex Fuentes.
Thank you. I will ask everybody at this time to please raise their right hand. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition? And it's not necessary to turn your microphone on. I will assume that there are no issues with that unless you tell me otherwise. Witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? Any members, including teacher and attorney coaches, family members and friends, anybody else present on this Zoom conference, do you promise to represent yourselves as positive role models and to behave in a manner that exemplifies ethical and professional sportsmanship during and after this mock trial? And finally, our scoring panelists. Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition? Again, I will assume that it is a positive answer unless you have notified us otherwise through the chat or through verbal right now. Otherwise, at this time, I will turn it over to the prosecution. It is your case. Please proceed as you deem fit.
Thank you, Your Honor. If
Your
everyone,
Honor, one point real quick.
Please.
We had some preliminary questions we had to ask you.
Please do.
All right. Your Honor, we ask that all stipulated facts be moved to evidence.
I see that as part of the rule, so I have absolutely no objection with that.
Next, Your Honor, we ask that we can assume that the jurors, opposing counsel, and you yourself have the exhibit packet so that we can enter evidence by referring to the exhibits specifically by number.
That is a fair assumption. I will agree to that.
Your Honor, we ask for permission to remain seated during opening statements, direct and cross-examination, objections, and closing arguments. And what we mean by seated is by having our cameras off.
That is absolutely no problem here. Thank you.
And then one final thing, Your Honor, we ask permission for the timekeeper to remain on screen at all times.
As long as the timekeepers have no issue with that. Obviously, timekeepers, if you need to shut off your camera for a second, if there's an issue, but otherwise, I do agree that that would make sense and make it easier for everybody to know the timing. So if that's okay with you timekeepers, if you could keep your camera on, I would appreciate that.
Thank you, Your Honor. That is all.
all right. Assuming everyone is ready for the prosecution's opening statement, I will begin. Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. We are here today to establish truth, and in doing so, promote justice. We are here to ensure that no wrongful action goes unpunished, to ensure that the law is upheld. Today, we look to deliver justice for the actions of Miss Avery Becker. Miss Becker was a naturally gifted lawyer on her mock trial team, a gift that she took great pride in. There is no crime in being proud of your achievements and talents, but such a pride can easily turn fatal. It's beyond believable. We've seen such a downfall of many people, both historically and fictionally. For instance, Sophocles' Antigone. The King Creon is a confident ruler, given the throne after a war, in which his nephews-in-law died. He decides to only bury the brother Euripides, not Polynices. Antigone, their sister, is shocked by this act of disrespect and goes out to bury her brother. And when she is caught, she stands strong in her conviction that what Creon chose is wrong. Creon, his pride wounded by her calling him out and disobeying his orders, imprisons Antigone to send her to her death. His fatal flaw is pride, blinding him from his mistake. causing him to kill his own niece and drive his closest family to death. Miss Becker is our Creon, and Mackenzie Brackman our Antigone. She could not stand when Mr. Brackman told her that her lack of work ethic was harmful to her teammates and herself, regardless of her natural talent. He wounded her pride when he called her out, like Antigone did Creon, in front of the whole team. Pride became her fatal flaw as well, causing her first to lash out and then kill Mackenzie Brackman. It is our duty to ensure that there's proper retribution for the death of Mr. Brackman. In order to prove that Miss Avery Becker broke into Mackenzie Brackman's house and murdered him on March 6, 2020, you will hear from 3 witnesses. First, you will hear from Alex Cifuentes. Alex is a member of the mock trial team and a close friend of Miss Becker. She can testify to the tense relationship between Brackman and Becker. Alex, as a friend of Avery, wants what is best for her, but above all, she wants the truth to be exposed. Alex held Mr. Brackman in high regard and desires justice for his tragic death. Alex will lay out Miss Becker's motive for killing Brackman with irrefutable evidence. Next, you will hear from Kyle Kuzak. She has 19 years of experience working with the Denver Police Department and is a certified crime scene reconstruction investigator. She will provide undeniable evidence proving that the incident was a burglary gone wrong that spiraled out of control as Miss Becker let her emotions get the best of her. Lastly, you will hear from Detective Jordan Markowitz. Markowitz joined the Denver Police Department 13 years ago and has served as a homicide detective for 7, making her expert opinion in this case essential. She will also provide solid, indisputable evidence, including video and cell phone records, that definitively incriminates Miss Becker. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it is imperative that you look at the facts as they are presented to you. Miss Avery Becker's case today will be nothing more than her cases in mock trial. A performance that must not fool you, for Miss Becker is, at her best, a performer. But the truth must not be stifled by a show, for what is not an elaborate, misleading production is the murder of Mr. Brackman, a man who wounded Miss Becker's pride, rendering him victim to her violent retaliation. The police have already determined that Miss Becker's fatal flaw led her to murder Mackenzie Brackman. Cell towers place her phone in the vicinity at the time of the murder, and the text messages between her and Ms. Cifuentes confirm her plan to break into Mr. Brackman's house. The evidence alone incriminates her. Miss Avery Becker has fallen victim to the ultimate fatal flaw, that of pride, leading her to commit actions of a knowing vengeance. If you look back at Antigone, Creon's fatal pride caused him to sentence Antigone to an unjust death. The sentence I want today is that of Miss Avery Becker, for she is guilty of the murder of Mr. Brackman. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Defense, do you wish to make an opening statement at this time?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed when you're ready.
Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel, and may it please the court. Members of the jury, I want you to think back to who you were in high school. Were you emotional? Irrational? Maybe you had a big ego? I'm sure that sometime in those forgotten 4 years, one of your teachers got on your very last nerve. You may have acted out, or at least considered it. But would you ever kill them? I don't think so. Members of the jury, the prosecution just stood up and told you a wonderful story and tied it in a neat little bow. But that's all it is. It's a story. One they've twisted to involve my client, Avery Becker, and accuse her, a teenager, of murder. They want to put her in jail for the rest of her life. The stakes are too high to listen to stories. So let me tell you the facts instead. Mr. Brackman was a bad lawyer. The prosecution's witnesses will confirm this. A few months ago, Mr. Brackman took on a case defending Jonathan Rollins, who was charged with murder. He lost, convicted and sentenced with life in prison. On sentencing, Jonathan Rollins declared that Mr. Brackman would die. We have that on tape. On the day of the murder, Blair Rollins, Jonathan's daughter, was not at school. Now, Mr. Brackman is dead. Blair Rollins is nowhere to be found. The police only investigated one suspect in this case. Obviously, it was Blair Rollins, right? No. Somehow, despite the facts, despite the evidence, the prosecution decided to accuse Avery Becker of coldly, viciously stabbing Mr. Brackman to death. Members of the jury, I'd like you to meet Avery. She's a high school senior. She's the award-winning star of the mock trial team. She's an aspiring lawyer. In her free time, she likes to shop at the mall, eat at the Fry Shack, or play video games with her friends. She can get a little heated at times. She makes mistakes, sure, but she apologizes and tries to fix it. She's a good person. Members of the jury, I'm sure you've made mistakes too, but I know you would never kill someone. I'd also like to introduce you to Avery's friend, Taylor Perkins. Miss Perkins was also on the mock trial team. Now she's a student at CU Boulder. She will confirm that she was with Avery all day the day that Mr. Brackman was killed. And she will confirm that while Avery didn't like Mr. Brackman, she would never, ever kill him. Finally, you'll meet Professor Van Owen, former detective and an expert in police practices, forensic evidence techniques, and criminal justice. Professor Van Owen will show you that gaping holes in the prosecution case. They got everything wrong, from the way they failed to corroborate key evidence, to the way they analyzed data from cell towers, and the way they failed to follow up on leads. Most importantly, Professor Van Owen's testimony will show you that there's still a lot we don't know. The police work was sloppy at best, certainly not enough to accuse my client of murder. The prosecution also plans to bring through witnesses. First, they will call Detective Jordan Markowitz, who did a laughable job trying to piece back together the crime scene. Not only that, they didn't even question other suspects before settling on my client. All the data that didn't support their theory, well, they conveniently ignored it, or they conveniently lost it. The prosecution's attorneys seem to even know that Detective Markowitz's statement was too shaky to be reliable, so they're calling another witness, Miss Kyle Kuzak, just to tell the jury to believe the police. Miss Kuzak talks a big game about her independent research methods and unbiased techniques, but upon closer inspection, we will show you how their analysis of the scene looks suspiciously similar to that of Detective Markowitz. I encourage you to take both their testimonies with a grain of salt. Finally, the prosecution is going to call Avery Becker's former classmate, Miss Alex Cifuentes, to the stand. But what they won't tell you is that Miss Cifuentes was twistingly jealous of Avery. In fact, Miss Cifuentes and their best friend, Blair Rollins, loathed my client. During the trial, we'll show you how Miss Cifuentes had the opportunity and the motive to help Blair Rollins frame my client for Mr. Brackman's murder. Members of the jury, at the end of this trial, you'll be asked to adjudicate beyond a reasonable doubt. We hold those words in our hearts very dearly in our criminal justice system because we want to make sure no one is wrongfully convicted of a crime. Those words also mean that the prosecution has the burden to prove to you that with almost full certainty, my client is guilty. My client, Avery Becker, is a wide-eyed, fun-loving teenager with a bright future and a lot to learn. Make the right decision. Don't let these stories ruin her life. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I will turn it over to the prosecution and ask that you call your first witness at this time.
Your Honor, the prosecution calls Alex Cifuentes to the stand. All right, wonderful. Good afternoon, Ms. Cifuentes. Let's begin your direct examination. So will you begin by saying your name and spelling it for the record?
I'm Alex Cifuentes, Sifuentes.
Okay, great. So let's begin with the direct questioning. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
I'm Alex. I'm a senior at Colorado High School and an active participant on their mock trial team.
And what was your experience in mock trial?
I love the mock trial team like a family, and nothing made me prouder than to be a part of it.
How did you get involved in the team?
My best friend and defendant, Avery Becker, actually introduced me to it.
What is your relationship with Ms. Becker?
Avery's my best friend.
And what was your relationship with Ms. Becker pertaining to the mock trial team?
Avery and I both excelled on the mock trial team, and ultimately competing with or against each other made us stronger opponents.
Are you aware of the rumors about you and Ms. Becker?
Yes.
What are they?
Unfortunately, due to the competitive atmosphere of mock trial, it's rumored that we are secretly enemies.
Are they accurate?
Not at all. If it weren't for these circumstances, I would find the claims comical.
And what is your relationship with Mr. Brackman?
Mr. Brackman was a great coach who genuinely loved what he was doing. I looked up to Brackman more than I did my own father.
I'd like to turn your attention now to the aftermath of the regional tournament. So explain to the jury what happened after the regional tournament.
Brackman told Avery that she didn't deserve the award she was given because of her lack of work ethic.
And to the best of your knowledge, how did Miss Becker respond?
She stormed out into a hissy fit. She vandalized Brackman's car with the words "Worst Attorney Award" in permanent Sharpie. I can't say that I was surprised.
Prior to the outburst, did you see where Miss Becker got the Sharpie?
Avery took the Sharpie from an easel of paper. Not a drawer, not a whiteboard, but an easel. They had Sharpies and pens, but no dry erase markers.
And to the best of your knowledge, how did Mr. Brackman respond to the vandalization?
Thankfully for Avery, he didn't press charges, but he kicked her off the team for good.
And did that affect the team?
Yeah, Avery was an outstanding performer and actor, so having her gone was a real disappointment.
And did Miss Becker attempt to get back on the team?
Yeah.
Your Honor, I am now going to refer the witness to Exhibit 14 and let the record reflect that we are all looking at Exhibit 14.
Thank you. The record will reflect as such.
Great. So, Ms. Cifuentes, do you recognize this?
Yes.
What are they?
This is a screenshot conversation of a text message between myself and Avery Becker.
What is your relationship to the screenshots?
I took them. They came from my phone.
Why did you send in screenshots instead of giving the original copy to the detective?
Well, my phone battery was bad, so it was plugged in charging at my house, and I forgot to bring it to the interview.
And why do we not have the phone with us today?
Like I said, the battery was bad, so I traded it in for a new one.
Have the screenshots been altered in any way since you last saw them?
No.
And how do they tie to the case?
They reflect both my relationship with Avery and Brackman's response to finding his car vandalized.
Your Honor, I believe that I have laid sufficient ground and move that Exhibit 14 be entered as evidence.
Any objections?
Yeah, objection, Your Honor, hearsay. This is an out-of-court statement.
And Ms. Dana, do you have a response to that?
I do, Your Honor. This statement was actually, Ms. Cifuentes is the author of this statement, therefore it is not hearsay.
Well, I will acknowledge that it is an out-of-court statement. I do believe that it is an exception to the hearsay rule. As such, I'm going to overrule that, and I'm going to go ahead and admit this as exhibit number 14 into the record. Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Cifuentes, what are the messages about?
Avery texted me she wanted to get back on the team, and she seemed pretty desperate. At that moment, Avery would have done anything to get back on the team and start fresh with Brackman, but it was a lost cause.
Are you aware of the rumor pertaining to Miss Becker's phone?
Yes.
What is the rumor?
Some people believe I stole the phone to give to Blair Rowlands, but up until the morning of March 6th, I was on Avery's side.
Let's focus a bit more on Blair Rowlands. What is the nature of your relationship with Mr. Rowlands?
I barely know Rowlands. I might have had a few classes with him, but he was just another face in the hallway.
Would you give the phone to Rowlands?
No, like I said, I barely knew him and would never intentionally put Mr. Brackman in danger.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Attorney Goin, do you wish to cross-examine?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please, when you're ready.
Hello, Miss Cifuentes. I'm sorry to hear the passing of your coach. So, Miss Cifuentes, you spent a lot of time working on your mock trial roles, correct?
Correct.
And you would expect the rest of the team to do the same, correct?
Correct.
But it seems like Avery wasn't working as hard as you were. Yes?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I don't know if she saw a mock trial the same way that the rest of us did. So.
You said this irked you, didn't it?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
You said this irked you, didn't it?
Yeah, sometimes it was disappointing to see, other people do better than me. But at the end of the day, as best friends, Avery and I were on the same team, regardless of mock trial roles.
It was a slap in the face to you. Yes.
Like I said, sometimes it was disappointing, but regardless, we were on the same team, and I was happy for Avery.
And you believe that Avery didn't win any of his awards based on any real talent, yes?
I said that Avery relied on her acting skills and her performing skills, which often brought her to success.
but it still wasn't any talent at mock trial.
I wouldn't say that Avery didn't have any talent.
And you believe that he should have been on the B team, didn't you?
Can you say that one more time?
You believed he should have been on the B team, didn't you?
I believed that having Avery move down to the B team was an opportunity for other people and was just kind of the nature of mock trial.
You believe it was an opportunity for yourself, didn't you?
Considering mock trial relies on the coming and going of new skill sets and strengths and weaknesses, it was just kind of the nature of it, and I was simply embracing that.
And you were very upset when Avery was back in the A team and won 2 awards for the regional tournament, yes?
I mean, it was frustrating because I worked hard too, but then again, she's my best friend and I love her to death.
And you said that you talked to Mr. Brackman about wanting Avery back on the team, yes?
Can you say that one more time?
You said earlier that you talked to Mr. Brackman about letting Avery back in the team, yes?
Did you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
You talked to Mr. Brackman about letting Avery back in the team, yes?
Correct.
But you did it begrudgingly because you thought the team was better off without Avery.
I did it for Avery's sake because I love her and I knew that it was important to her.
But you still thought the team was better off without her, yes?
I thought it was like an opportunity for other kids.
An opportunity for yourself.
I wouldn't say necessarily myself. I had the year after Avery graduated, so I was in no rush and I was happy at my position.
Objection, Your Honor. That is an asked and answered question. The council has already asked if she thought it was an opportunity for herself.
What?
I will. Yes. I have already asked that question.
Okay, in that case, I will sustain it. Please move on.
You claim to have some text messages from Avery, yeah?
Correct.
But those texts from you are green, aren't they?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
The texts that are coming from your phone are green, yes?
Are green?
Yes, the color of the texts that come from you are green.
Correct.
But Avery did you know Avery has an iPhone?
Yes.
And those messages are supposed to be blue.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevancy.
Your response to that?
I am trying to talk to the validity of the text messages, and calling out the fact that they are blue would show that they were doctored text messages.
Based on that offer of proof, I'll allow this line of questioning, although I will remind the counselor to make sure that this is something that is within the particular witness's knowledge base.
Yes, Your Honor. So, having an iPhone, you would know that the text messages between 2 iPhones should be blue.
Yeah, they're typically blue, but sometimes depending on like Wi-Fi and range, they can be green.
When you went to the police station, you forgot your phone at home, didn't you?
Yes, it had a bad battery and I was charging it.
So the police haven't seen these messages from your physical phone, have they?
No, I offered to bring it in, but Markowitz told me that the screenshots would be sufficient.
So the police never even asked to see your phone, did they?
I wasn't directly involved with that. Markowitz was the one requesting the photos.
But they didn't ask you. We only have these screenshots in court today, don't we?
Correct.
And you don't have the phone to verify these, do you?
Unfortunately, I don't.
And you don't even know where the phone is, do you?
No idea.
And speaking of lost phones, you were in possession of Avery Becker's phone the night before the murder, weren't you?
I was. I played a game on her phone.
No further questions, Your Honor.
And you redirect.
Yes, Your Honor, there is actually. So let's look at the Fresh Act, which you brought up at the end of their cross. And once again, hello, Ms. Fuentes. So you saw Avery at the Fresh Act, correct?
Correct.
What did you do there?
We mainly talked about other extracurriculars that Avery could get involved in since mock trial was no longer an option.
And did you play a game on Miss Becker's phone?
I did.
However, would you ever do anything to put Mr. Brackman in potential danger or use the phone to accomplish this?
Never.
Okay, and let's briefly look at what the opposing counsel brought up about the text messages. Are you aware that sometimes text messages turn green when you're out of distance or using cellular?
Objection, Your Honor, leading.
Sustained. Please rephrase so it's no longer a leading question.
Okay, do text messages sometimes turn green between iPhones?
They do.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any recross?
A brief recross, Your Honor.
Please.
But I just want to ask one more time. You were in possession of Avery Becker's phone the night before the murder.
I had her phone to play a game, but it was left at the table.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Does the state have another witness they wish to call? Mr. Branson, it looks like I cannot hear you if you are talking right now. No luck yet, Mr. Branson. I know you're trying here.
Your Honor, I believe that Mr. Branson here is trying to reconnect. We do have the option. I'm sitting in the same room with him if he can use my computer.
Why don't we give him 1 second to try to reconnect? And if not, then I have absolutely no problem with him using your computer if that's the only way we can get it to work. Although I will say, Mr. Slavin, it looks like you also just locked up, so that might be an issue also.
Your Honor, by any chance, can you hear me now?
Mr. Branson, I can indeed hear you. Thank you. I seem to have lost Mr. Slavin, but I can hear you at least.
Well, perfect. The prosecution calls Kyle Kuzak to the stand.
Thank you. And Ms. Kuzak, you have been sworn in. I ask you to please proceed.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ms. Kuzak. Please state your name for the record and spelling the last.
It's Kyle Kuzak, and that's Kuzak.
And can you explain to the court why you were called to the stand today?
Of course. I am here to offer up an analysis on the homicide of Mackenzie Brackman.
And how were you involved in this investigation?
I am a Colorado Bureau of Investigation Certified Crime Scene Reconstruction Investigator, also known as a CSR.
And what does this job entail, Ms. Kuzak?
I investigate crime scenes, including home invasions, burglaries, robberies, homicides, and domestic violence.
And how long have you been a crime scene reconstruction investigator investigating crime scenes such as these?
I have had 19 years of experience, and I've spent the last 3 years of my tenure with the city of Denver.
Perfect. And are you a police officer with the Denver Police Department?
I am not. I am a civilian employee with the Denver PD.
Okay, thank you. And now let's move on to the case and investigation at hand. What were your first impressions once upon the scene?
The events and evidence did not indicate a complicated fact pattern.
Despite this not complicated fact pattern, did you change the way you conducted your investigation based on your simplistic view of the scene?
Absolutely not. I assume every case is going to trial, so I always conduct a thorough investigation. Secondly, I document and organize all evidence with a mindset of reconstruction.
Perfect. And can you break that down? What does that exactly entail?
Of course. I look at everything on scene as a potential clue, and I rebuild the sequence of actions as they happened in real time.
And why is that important?
These principles ensure a concise and accurate flow of my work, which I approach in 2 steps.
And what are those 2 parts you use?
First, I use the Bevel and Garner 7-step methodology, and next I use the 5 CSR steps in reconstruction.
Your Honor, I believe I have laid sufficient foundation and move to have Ms. Kuzak admitted as an expert witness in crime scene reconstruction.
Response from the defense, please.
I would like to voir dire, Your Honor.
Please.
Hello, Ms. Kuzak. You did not provide a CV for this case, did you?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
You did not provide a CV for this case, did you?
A CD?
CV.
I provided a spreadsheet that I made in preparation for this case, yes.
I'm talking about your resume. Curriculum. Did you provide one for this case?
I believe there is a resume, but again, I have the spreadsheet with all my work in it that I made for this case.
Okay, and you do not specialize in homicides nor burglaries, do you?
I do actually specialize in homicides and burglaries, yes.
But in your direct right now, you just stated that you only work with them, you don't specifically specialize in them.
Well, I do work with them, but as an expert, I would say that I also specialize in them.
Okay, and you're a civilian employee of the DPD, not an actual police officer, is that correct?
I am a civilian employee, but with 19 years of experience, I would say I have as much credentials as a police officer.
Okay, at this time, the defense moves to not admit Kyle Kuzak as an expert witness under Rule 702, lack of education.
Well, I acknowledge there are, of course, issues, as any expert witness that I've ever seen in this courtroom. Based on what I've heard, based on the years of experience, based on the information that I have seen, I'm going to go ahead and admit Ms. Kuzak as an expert witness, specifically as a crime scene recreation expert for purposes of this trial. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. And now back to Ms. Kuzak. Thank you for your background, and let's work backwards towards the scene, please.
Of course.
Please start from the beginning of your investigation.
I visited the scene of the homicide at 444 South Flower Street after it was processed by other members of the crime lab.
Okay, and what did you do once upon the scene?
I reviewed all the police reports, the photographs from the scene, and the 4 ring security cameras.
And after this?
I created a witness tracking spreadsheet to summarize key points of information from both witnesses and suspects.
Perfect. And where can we find this spreadsheet?
In Exhibit 17, it is a copy of the spreadsheet that
I can't really hear the questions of the direct. They're a little bit quiet on my end.
Thank you very much. Mr. Branson, is it possible to have you scooch a little closer to the microphone?
Of course. Is this a little better?
Wonderful, right there.
Perfect. Okay. I'll repeat the last question. And where can we find this spreadsheet, Ms. Kuzak?
You can find it in Exhibit 17, which is a spreadsheet that I prepared for this case.
Perfect. And then can everyone please turn their attention to Exhibit 17 in the case packet? And Your Honor, I move to have Exhibit 17 admitted as evidence in this case.
Any response?
I'm okay with that.
Seeing no objection, I will admit Exhibit 17 as exhibit number 17.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you. And then now, Ms. Kuzak, can you please explain the importance of this spreadsheet?
Of course. Reconstruction of evidence is useful to corroborate or refute statements. Witnesses and the evidence they supply has a chance to be inaccurate, but objective evidence is never inaccurate.
Thank you. And then can you continue please walking us through your steps? What's next after this?
Of course. I create a physical spreadsheet and flowchart to show the chronological and physical relationships.
And what benefit does that serve?
Well, visual aids such as these are helpful in explaining the case to others and to place them into a stream of context.
And can you please explain for the courtroom, how beneficial are these visual aids?
Oh, they're extremely beneficial. Organizing the photographs into spreadsheets highlight the chronological order of events, clearing up any confounding details.
Perfect. And before we address the homicide, I want to address an anomaly you noticed in your report, which were the corrupted photographs.
Of course, digital files for the photographs of the crime scene became partially corrupted, but that was after I already reviewed them.
So since it was after you already reviewed the photos, did this impact your investigation in any way, shape, or form?
Not at all.
Okay. Now give me your initial observations once on the scene.
Of course, in the afternoon of March 6, 2020, a perpetrator matching the height and width of the defendant approached the house.
Perfect. And how exactly did you know the perpetrator and the defendant share similar physical similarities?
Through the three ring zoom cameras.
Okay, perfect. And could you explain how the perpetrator entered the house?
Of course, the perpetrator initially stepped on the front porch, which was caught by the first ring camera. Then they stepped onto the south side of the residence, which was outside of the camera range. Next, the perpetrator was opening up the fence gate and was captured 10 seconds later by another security camera while entering the residence through the sliding glass door.
And what were your observations once inside the house?
The scuff marks near the door show struggle, and the drawer was open, which small knives were found, but more importantly, on the counter was a knife block in which one large knife was missing.
Perfect. And what is the significance of this knife block?
The missing knife was a large chef knife, and the knife recovered from Mr. Brackman's body was also a large chef knife.
Okay, perfect. And where can we see images of the knife block and the knife?
In Exhibit 8.
Okay, can everyone please turn their attention to Exhibit 8? And Judge, I move to have Exhibit 8 entered as evidence.
Any objections?
No objections.
Seeing there are no objections, I will go ahead and admit it. What's been identified as Exhibit 8 as Exhibit 8.
Perfect. Thank you. And Your Honor, that'll be all for today.
Any any cross-examination of this witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Okay, so for the theory of the case, you reconstructed the crime scene, correct?
Can you please repeat that?
Sorry. For your theory of this case, you reconstructed the crime scene, correct?
That is true. I am a crime scene reconstruction investigator.
But you were unable to recreate all event segments of the case.
I created every segment that is useful to the courtroom today.
But you were also able to place all the evidence exactly where it's supposed to be?
Can you please rephrase the first part of that question?
You were also unable to place all the evidence into the timeline?
I placed all the evidence that I could find in a chronological order as shown in my works that I prepared for this case.
But not all of the evidence, every single piece of it that you collected?
Well, before I came in, there was other members of the crime lab that reviewed the crime scene, and I picked up any evidence I could find and I reported it.
Okay. And for the scuff marks you mentioned, did you date them?
Scuff marks actually cannot be dated, but evidence suggests, especially with the help of the broken plate, that it was due to a brawl near the back.
It could also be from moving furniture, isn't that correct?
Well, we cannot say for sure, and I'm not an expert in knowing what they would do to their house, but evidence shows that they had a brawl, and that was evidence.
Correct.
Can you please repeat that?
It could have been there before.
It's always possible, but it's probable that it was due to a struggle.
In fact, you wanted more evidence to prove your theory of the case today, isn't that correct?
I'm sorry, it glitched out. Can you please rephrase that?
Sorry. In fact, you wanted more evidence to prove your theory of the case?
I wanted more evidence?
You said so in your statement.
Well, I mean, if the more evidence you can find, the better it is to make a good case for it. But I believe I found efficient evidence to make a proper case for this court.
But you don't have more evidence available, do you, to fully confirm your theory of the case?
I have all the evidence available to me and all the evidence that is needed for this case.
Okay. Moving on, for every crime scene, you always take a 5-step analysis of the crime scene, is that correct?
Well, I use 2 methods, the Bevel and Garner's 7-step methodology and the 5 CSR steps, yes.
Okay, well, I'm just going to focus on the 5 CSR steps. As a part of your steps, do you evaluate the evidence?
The what?
As a part of your steps, you evaluate the evidence, correct?
Yes, we always evaluate the evidence in a mindset of reconstruction.
And as a part of this case, you did not recover any DNA, correct?
Correct.
And you're saying that even though there was blood on the crime scene, you didn't bother to test that for DNA?
Again, I just reconstruct the crime scene. I am not a forensic analyst. I am an expert in crime scene reconstruction, which means I just place all the events into a chronological order in a spreadsheet.
But you also use that evidence to make your conclusion, correct?
Yes, we make conclusions off of evidence, but I am not alone in finding the evidence. There are other members of the lab.
Okay, but you also found no fingerprints on the crime scene, correct?
That is correct.
And the security, okay, and the security footage you reviewed only showed the general height and build, which doesn't exactly match that of our defendant, Avery Becker, correct?
Well, from the Ring Zoom camera, it did match a perpetrator of the exact height and build of the person we are prosecuting today.
But it doesn't match it exactly. It's only a general height and a general build.
Well, through Zoom camera, exact like height and build is hard to see, but we are very sure with probable evidence that it is true that it matches our prosecutor.
But because the height and build is general, it could have matched anyone. It could have matched you.
Well, there's anyone with the same height and build as a lot of other people, but evidence suggests that it was Avery Becker in this courtroom, and that's why we are here.
But you cannot draw a concrete conclusion that Avery Becker, since the evidence on the scene does not corroborate that conclusion.
Your Honor, I object. This question has been asked and answered.
Response?
I have not asked the question yet. I only asked if she couldn't draw the conclusion based off of other stuff, but this is a different thing.
I tend to agree that we're not at the point that I believe it to be cumulative. As such, I will go ahead and overrule that objection. Please proceed.
I will re-ask the question. So technically, you cannot draw a concrete conclusion that Avery Becker is guilty since evidence on the scene does not corroborate that conclusion.
Well, the Ring Zoom camera did show the height and build of the perpetrator, which was also matched with other evidence inside the house, such as the knife and other things I found that I marked in my spreadsheet.
Sorry, I'm going to cut you off. That wasn't the question. You cannot draw a concrete conclusion. Is that correct?
We can draw the best conclusion we can based off our evidence.
But it's not concrete.
All evidence leads to a
I'll just
conclusion.
like a yes or no answer, please.
From our knowledge, it is the most concrete it can be.
All right, no further questions, Your Honor.
Attorney Branson, do you wish to have any redirect?
I do, Your Honor. Ms. Cusack, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I'd first like to start off with the Ring Zoom cameras. Under your impression, it is believable that this does match the height and build of our defendant, correct?
Yes, it is. Evidence shows that the height and build does match the perpetrator.
Okay, and then one more question about crime scene reconstruction in general. It is impossible to come to concrete conclusions. However, this scenario that you examine in your Exhibit 17 is to the best of your knowledge, the most truth that you can get out of the evidence, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and that'll be all for today, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any recross?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Then I will dismiss this witness, and I will ask whether the state has any further witnesses that they wish to put on at this time.
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Detective Jordan Markowitz to the stand.
Detective, you have been sworn in. I ask you to proceed when you're ready.
Thank you.
Your Honor, can you hear me all right?
I can. Thank you for checking. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Detective Markowitz. My name is Liam Slavin. I will be conducting your direct examination today. Let us begin. Please state your name for the court, including the spelling of the last.
Jordan Markowitz, Markowitz.
Now, why are you here in front of the court today, Detective?
I was assigned to investigate the death of Mackenzie Brockman.
And what is your career?
I'm currently a homicide detective with the Denver Police Department.
How long have you been active in the Denver Police Department?
I joined the DPD 13 years ago.
Now, you said that you were a homicide detective. How long have you served within that specific role?
7 years, sir.
Now, being a homicide detective, do you have any specialized training relevant to today's case?
Yes, sir, I do.
What specializations, detective?
I earned a cell phone technology and forensic data recovery certificate from the American Academy of Law Enforcement.
Very impressive, detective. Now, how often do you utilize this training within your field?
I utilize that training constantly within my field. I've downloaded the contents from literally hundreds of cell phones, and I've used cell phone tower data analysis in over 50 cases.
Now, detective, could you please tell us about the case of the death of Mackenzie Brackman that you were assigned to?
So on March 6, 2020, a report was filed to the police station about a passed out person on the porch of the victim's residence. Paramedics first responded, and after the police arrived, I was called in.
Now, what did you see at the scene of the crime?
I observed an open front door with the victim having been stabbed from behind, bled out on the floor. I then examined the rest of the residency and documented the evidence and took photographs for the record.
Your Honor, I move to enter this witness, Detective Jordan Markowitz, as an expert in cell phone technology and forensic data recovery, as well as a homicide detective.
Attorney Vora, any response?
Brief or dire, sir.
Please take your time.
Good afternoon, Detective Markowitz. Just to be clear, you're not an expert in blood spatter, correct?
That is correct. However, I have 13 years of experience with the Denver Police Department and 7 as a homicide detective.
All right, thank you. In your witness statement, you say that you've had the, quote, displeasure of being cross-examined by Mr. Brackman many times. Isn't that right?
Although that is true, I reserve my personal emotions far away from my professional ones, and therefore had an unbiased opinion going into this case and continued that throughout my investigation.
Because he attacked the work of the police?
Your Honor, sorry, Councilman, what Detective Brockman did as a defense attorney required him to go into the investigations of police.
And you're so upset because your detective work was bad, wasn't it?
Not at all, Your Honor. Not at all, Councilman. I apologize.
Okay. Detective Markowitz, can you tell me how long your forensic data recovery course was?
It was 3 days. However, I got a lot of other training outside of the 3-day training because I use it constantly within my field, and that kind of experience ties into my expertise.
3 days, that's not a lot of time. Your Honor, at this time, I would like to object to any expert testimony regarding blood spatter, forensic data recovery, and cell phone technology under CRE 702A and D. 3-day course is not nearly enough time to develop specialized knowledge on the topic.
Thank you, Counselor. Well, I do tend to agree that 3 days might not be enough. As Detective Markowitz has stated to us, it does appear that there is an extensive background with actual experience, not just educated experience. I also do have concerns, as you pointed out, as far as a potential bias or prejudice, but I will allow you to elaborate that during your cross-examination. As such, I'm going to go ahead and overrule your objection to admitting this particular expert as an expert witness, and I will admit Detective Markowitz as an expert for those fields tendered by Attorney Slavin. Attorney Slavin, I ask you to do proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let's continue, Detective Markowitz. You said earlier that you took photographs of the scene of the crime. Is this correct?
Yes, sir.
Detective, could you please direct your attention to what has been previously marked as an exhibit of a copy of Exhibit 2?
All right, I have it in front of me, sir.
Do you recognize this, Detective?
Yes, I do.
What is it exactly?
This is a photograph of the victim I took at the scene of the crime.
Is this a fair and accurate copy?
Correct.
Your Honor, I offer Exhibit 2 into evidence.
Any objections?
No objections, Your Honor.
What's been marked as Exhibit 2 shall be put into the record as Exhibit number 2.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let's continue, Detective. Now, as a detective, what can be inferred from this photograph that you took?
So clearly the victim was stabbed from behind and he is laying on the ground bleeding.
Does your viewing of the scene of the crime indicate that the victim was stabbed while burglary was being committed?
Yes, it does. The fact that the house was disturbed and the victim died in the house suggests that the victim died during a burglary.
Now, after taking that picture, did you notice anything else at the residency?
I did. I noticed 2 Ring cameras, one located at the front and one located at the back of the residency.
Detective Markowitz, could you please direct your attention to what has been previously marked as a copy of Exhibit 12?
Alrighty.
Do you recognize this?
Yes, sir. So in addition to the photographs, I downloaded the contents of the victim's cell phone and ring camera videos, and Exhibit 12 is one of the videos I downloaded from the victim's cell phone.
And has this video been altered in any way, shape, or form?
No, it has not.
Your Honor, I offer Exhibit 12 into evidence.
Any objections, Ms. Bora?
No objections, Your Honor.
Exhibit 12 shall be entered into the record.
Now, Your Honor, seeing as Exhibit 12 is a video and has been entered into evidence, do I have permission to share my screen and play this video for the jury?
You may proceed accordingly.
Thank you, Your Honor. We will continue. Detective, what does this video show?
This video shows a person walk up to the back door, which was obviously unlocked, and then proceed into the residence. The intruder is wearing gloves, a mask, and a hoodie.
What does this suggest to you in your expert opinion, Detective?
This suggests that the intruder was planning on breaking and entering into the dwelling, as the gloves and mask suggest, and this also clearly shows some form of criminal mischief against Mr. Brockman and his residency.
Thank you, Detective. Let's shift to a different topic of your expertise. Detective, you stated earlier, and you stated earlier that you were an expert in cell phone technology and forensic data recovery. Is this correct?
Yes.
Did you utilize those skills within today's case?
Yes, I did.
In what ways, Detective?
So I used my training to access the account details, information, and call records of the victim's cell phone.
Detective Markowitz, if you could please direct your attention to what has been previously marked as a copy of Exhibit 16.
All right, I have it in front of me.
Do you recognize this?
Yes, sir.
What is it exactly?
Exhibit 16 is a diagram that I made that summarizes the call detail records, or CDR, and shows the cell phone ID to Avery Becker, the defendant, with the route I believe Ms. Becker likely used to get to Mr. Brockman's residency.
Is this a fair and accurate copy?
Yes, sir, it is.
Your Honor, I offer Exhibit 16 into evidence.
Attorney Bora?
No objections, Your Honor.
Shall be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Detective, for the sake of the jury, could you please explain exactly what a CDR is? It sounds like a complicated.
Kind of is. So when you place a direct call or text, a record of that interaction is created. And the record shows the date and time of the communication, whether it was incoming or outgoing, a call or text, and how long it lasted. And additionally, the record also identifies what cell tower the cell phone was communicating with.
And what does this specific CDR demonstrate to you?
So this particular CDR has 3 cell phone towers in the area with time stamps. So at 12:47, a cell phone was picked up in the general area of Ms. Becker's house. And at 12:55, the same cell phone was pinged outside the mall. And finally, between 1:05 and 1:17, the phone pinged 3 separate times, all within close proximity to the victim's house.
Now, Detective, did this phone ever ping inside of the mall or, for example, inside of the Fry Shack?
No, it did not. And as Exhibit 16 shows, if the cell phone was ever near the Fry Shack or in the mall, a record of that interaction would have been recorded.
Now, to reiterate for the jury, Detective, does the evidence from today's case point to second-degree burglary being committed?
Yes. So after reviewing the case and the evidence, I can see that a perpetrator broke into the victim's house wearing a mask and gloves. And during that, a struggle ensued, and the victim was stabbed in the back and died as a result, which suggests burglary and first-degree felony murder.
And Detective, using your expertise, is it probable that the defendant, Ms. Becker, committed these crimes?
Yes. So the evidence points to the fact that the majority of the communications came from Ms. Becker's phone around the victim's residence and not the mall. And to me, this shows that Ms. Becker was indeed at the scene of the crime.
Thank you, Detective Markowitz. There are no further questions, Your Honor.
Attorney Vora, your witness.
Good afternoon, Detective Markowitz. Just to circle back, you do say that you have encountered Mr. Brockman quite a few times, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
You claim that he took a lot of, quote, cheap shots.
it was his job to do a full investigation
Okay.
of other.
You also
prosecution.
examined Mr. Brockman's emails, isn't that correct?
I will ask Ms. Borda to stop talking for one moment. Mr. Slavin, you had a question or a comment?
Yes, Your Honor, I object to that question on the grounds that this question calls for an irrelevant answer.
Ms. Borda?
Your Honor, I'll get to the point quickly. I'm just trying to establish the witness's relationship with Mr. Brockman.
I do believe this is foundational. As such, I will overrule that. Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You also examined Mr. Brockman's emails, isn't that correct?
I did. I downloaded data context from his cell phone, yes.
Okay, and you found quite a few emails regarding mock trial, didn't you?
No, so the way I came into the lead of mock trial, I actually saw the shirt that he was wearing and it said, "Keep calm and mock trial on." And so that led me to further investigate what exactly is mock trial and his interactions.
All right, you did find quite a few emails regarding mock trial, did you not?
No, I did not.
I'll just move on. You did testify that Mr. Brockman seemed to spend, quote, more time on mock trial than he did on his real job. Isn't that correct?
So it kind of did appear to me that way. However, having a strong extracurricular and being involved with the community is a very positive
I'm just
thing
asking
for a
to what
person
you
to
had
do.
in your witness statement.
Pardon me?
I'm just asking what you testified to in your witness statement.
Yes, and I answered your question,
Okay,
Counselor.
so you agree that he wasn't a very competent lawyer.
No, I did not say that.
Okay, now Detective Markowitz, you even considered the possibility that the perpetrator could be an ex-client.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Good police work requires one to look at all leads. And I
But you
followed
didn't
up on a lead
investigate
with
any
mock
of his
trial, which brought me the
ex-clients.
defendant.
You didn't investigate any of his ex-clients, didn't you?
No, because the evidence brought me to the mock trial team and Avery Becker as a suspect.
So you're telling me that you always just assume your first lead is correct?
No, that is not true. I follow
Okay.
the evidence and go where the evidence brings me. Yeah.
Isn't it true that you did investigate only one suspect in this case?
No, I looked at 3 main suspects and then I moved down, and once my investigation and more evidence arose,
Can you tell me
I
who
narrowed
those
it down
3
to
main
1.
suspects were?
So the 3 main suspects, as was also clarified in Exhibit 17, were Alex Fuentes, Avery Becker, and then another interview was with, hold on, let me pull it up real quick, the one who placed the
That's
911
okay,
call.
I'll move
the
on.
neighbor.
Detective Markowitz, you say that it was, quote, fairly obvious that the victim grabbed the knife and tried to attack the perpetrator. Isn't that true?
Yes, because the knife was stabbed in the back,
And you
specifically the
came to this
aorta.
conclusion in your initial investigation of the crime scene. Isn't that correct?
Yes, because that's where the
Before
knife
you
was
saw the
found.
footage from the Ring doorbell.
That is correct.
So you didn't actually consider the height and build of the intruder when you jumped to this conclusion. Isn't that right?
I follow all the evidence and what it brings me to.
Okay, moving on. You obtained call detail records from Miss Becker's cell phone provider, right?
I absolutely did, and which were all pinged 3 times next to the victim's
And you
residence.
found that Taylor Perkins sent several text messages and calls to Avery Becker.
I'm sure that is very common in high school.
Did Miss Becker ever respond to those messages?
No, there was
Did
no
she answer the
record of
calls?
response. I'm sorry, Counselor, may I answer your question?
I'm just asking for a yes or no answer. You don't need to elaborate.
Okay, so if something was pinged, if the record was, if Miss Becker actually texted Mrs. Perkins, a record of that interaction would have been recorded.
I'm just asking you, did Miss Becker answer the text messages or calls?
No, she did not.
Okay, so you have no clue whether my client even knew where her phone was on March 6th.
No, but I'm assuming, as you know, with all teenagers, it was on her.
Okay, I'd like to direct the witness to review Exhibit 16, which has previously been entered into evidence. Detective Markowitz, just so we're clear, Miss Becker's house is close to cell tower 12273, right?
That is correct, and her cell phone was
And
picked
Miss
up in that
Rollins'
area
house-
on the day of the phone.
Miss Rollins' house is
Day of the
also
murder.
near that same cell tower.
That is correct.
So both houses are in close proximity to cell tower 12273.
However, Miss Becker's phone was
I'm just
one who
asking
pinged
you
off of
both
those
were in
cell phone
close
towers.
proximity. Isn't it possible that Miss Becker's cell phone moved from Miss Rollins' house to the victim's residence?
Although it is possible, it is very unlikely.
Okay,
Because Ms.
Detective
Becker's cell
Markowitz.
phone pinged up in the general area of Ms. Becker's
Okay,
house on
Detective
the day of
Markowitz,
murder.
I'd like to direct you to take a look at the Ring doorbell footage in Exhibit 12. Do you see my client's
Alright.
face in any of the videos?
No, the perpetrator was wearing a Halloween mask,
Okay,
gloves,
what about
and
her
a
hair?
hoodie.
What about her hair?
Once
Do you see
again,
her
a
hair?
hoodie was covering any other identifying
Any other
features.
identifying
ma'am.
features?
No, because
Was
the
the mask-
perpetrator was wearing clothing to cover it up.
Was the mask in the video found in my client's possession?
No, because we were not able to get an interview from your
Because you
client.
didn't care
because-
to look for it?
No, counselor, because the lawyers, Ms. Becker's lawyers denied us the opportunity to interview Ms. Becker.
Okay. I think I can ask a few more questions. You mentioned that you used screenshots sent to you by some Alex Cifuentes to identify my client.
Yes, I did. I interviewed the Alex Fuentes.
Detective Markowitz, you say you took a course in forensic data recovery, correct?
Yes, and cell phone technology.
And you agree that it's possible to alter screenshots?
It is possible, however, there's no evidence stating that these screenshots were indeed altered.
You do have training in Cellbrite technology, correct?
I have training in cell phone data technology and forensic data recovery, ma'am.
Yeah, and specifically Cellbrite forensic data technology.
That is correct.
Okay. You yourself say you've used it in hundreds of cases.
Oh, absolutely. It's some training I bring into my career as a detective constantly.
Just so the jury is clear, Cellbrite technology is used to download text message data from cell phones. Isn't that true?
So Cellbrite technology is also used in other forensic things, such as recovering photographs.
Why didn't you
videos, and
use
other-
that technology to corroborate Cifuentes' screenshots?
Your Honor, I
Because
object
you
to this
cannot
question as it is argumentative.
download.
Okay, so you're telling me that
Ms. Bora, I will stop you for just a moment. Mr. Slavin had an objection in regards to this question being argumentative. Do you have a response to that?
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear. I'm not being argumentative. I'm just asking why the witness didn't do a specific thing.
I will overrule that objection and allow you to proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I just have one more question for you.
Go ahead.
You're telling me that you accused my client, a high schooler, of murder, and you didn't even take the time to make sure that your key witness was telling the truth?
So evidence that I recovered from the crime scene brought me Miss Becker's as a suspect rather than any other interview I did.
But you did not corroborate the screenshots. Isn't that right?
That is correct. However, the authenticity of these texts is proven.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Attorney Slavin, and you redirect.
Your Honor, before we begin with that, I would like to ask my timekeeper how much time is left on the direct.
You have about 6 minutes left.
Thank you. Yes, Your Honor, I will continue with a redirect.
Please do.
Hello again, Detective. I would like to ask you a few more questions. Detective,
Go ahead.
active homicide detective for the last 13 years. Is this correct?
Yes, it is.
And in addition to your expertise as that homicide detective, you earned a 3-day certificate in cell phone data recovery. Is that correct?
That is true. And I use that certificate constantly within my field.
Yes. Now, would you say that this certificate, no matter how long the course was, has been important to your work?
Oh, absolutely.
Your Honor,
The
leading?
field training.
Response, Mr. Slavin?
I will move on, Your Honor.
Okay.
Detective, have you used this 3-day certificate in the last 13 years of your work?
Oh, absolutely. I pull it in constantly as a homicide detective.
Now, with that long and extensive 13-year career, would you consider yourself a good detective?
With my 7 years as a detective, I would.
Now, with that being said, do you believe that you've neglected any aspect of today's case?
Oh, absolutely not. I followed the evidence and I followed up on my leads, and therefore brought me to the conclusion that Ms. Becker is guilty today.
Thank you, Detective. No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Bora, any recross?
No recross, Your Honor.
Thank you. Does the state have any further witnesses they wish to put on at this time?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Seeing that the state is resting at this time, does the defense have any evidence or witnesses that they would like to put on?
The defense would like to call Avery Becker to the stand.
Ms. Becker, you have been sworn in. Ms. Vora, please proceed when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Ms. Becker. How are you doing?
Okay, a little overwhelmed, I guess.
That's totally understandable. Lucky for you, the first question is easy. Can you please state your name, spelling the last for the record?
Avery Becker, Beckerer.
So, Avery, where do you go to school?
I graduated, but I used to go to Colorado High School.
What kinds of activities did you enjoy doing at school?
I used to be on mock trial. It was so much fun, and I was so good at it. We won all of our competitions. I won a ton of awards, best attorney.
That's awesome. How did you become interested in mock trial?
My friend Taylor and I decided to join for fun. It was an excuse to see her after school, especially since my parents take my phone away after dinner. Turns out I was really good at it.
Yeah, maybe one day you'll be a lawyer too, huh?
Yeah, I hope so.
So, Avery, what else do you like to do in your free time?
I really like playing video games, going to the mall, going out to eat with my friends, just normal teenager stuff, I guess.
Okay, now, Avery, I know this is nerve-wracking, so I want you to take a couple deep breaths. How did you know Mr. Brockman?
He was my mock trial coach.
What did you think of him?
I disliked him for sure, but he was honestly a good coach. He got us to a place where we were competitive. I think he may have been jealous of me, though. I heard he wasn't a very good lawyer.
Can you tell me a little bit more about your relationship with Mr. Brockman?
I don't think he liked me very much because I didn't put a lot of effort into mock trial, but I was still really good. He was always criticizing me and my work ethic, but he still gave me the best roles since I won us all the awards.
Now, Miss Becker, despite all of those awards, how did all those criticisms make you feel?
You know, I tried to not let it get to me and to take the high road. Even though we argued and he could be mean, I know that I'm really good at mock trial. But I do remember one time when I acted out, I still really regret it.
Okay, now Avery, remember that you're only on trial for the events of March 6th. But would you mind sharing a little bit more about the time that you did act out?
Yeah, I remember it was the practice after regionals. Mr. Brockman was being so critical of me. I was so upset.
What did he say to you?
I just won Best Attorney and Best Closing Awards, but all Brockman could do was criticize me. He told me that I didn't deserve them and I just relied on my good looks.
Your Honor, I object to that question.
What's your basis for the objection?
Your question calls for a hearsay answer.
Response?
Your Honor, two responses. First, this testimony isn't being offered for the truth of the matter, just to establish some context. And second, under hearsay exception 807A2, Mr. Brockman has unfortunately passed away, so this is the only way to obtain the relevant evidence.
I'm going to reserve my judgment until I can hear a little more of what's being offered. As such, I'm going to overrule that objection at this time, but I might have to revisit that at a later time. Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. What happened then, Avery?
I started out of practice with a marker and wrote Worst Attorney Award on his car. I swear to God, I honestly thought it was an Expo marker, but it was actually a Sharpie. Who knew?
I see. Oof. What did you do when you realized your mistake?
I felt really bad. In fact, I still do. I offered to scrub his car clean and to get a job over the summer to repaint it. It was the least I could do. The next day, I decided to go to his office in person to apologize, but he didn't want to talk to me.
Did you face any consequences?
Oh yeah, Brockman was super mad. I got kicked off the team.
Okay, and what did you do once you got kicked off the team?
Well, I guess I deserved to get kicked off, but nonetheless, I really cared about mock trial. I apologized profusely and tried to have other members talk to him for me, but I guess that was it.
How did you feel about that?
Like I said, I was upset, but I had to face the consequences of my actions.
I see. I'd now like to shift your attention to the day that Coach Brockman was murdered. Can you please tell me where you were on March 6th?
I was looking for my phone with Taylor. We decided to ditch school and go back to the fry shack in the mall where we were the day before to search for it.
When did you realize your phone was missing?
Well, I'm not allowed to use my phone at night, so I didn't realize until Friday. Usually I go to Taylor's house and she takes me to school, usually I go to Taylor's house and I pick her up. And that's when I was like, oh my God, where's my phone?
I see. Did you eventually find your phone?
No, Taylor kept calling it, but we just couldn't find it. In retrospect, we should have used Find My iPhone, but I forgot that you could use it on Samsung phones. Honestly, my mind was somewhere else. I was pretty upset about the whole situation. I think that's why I didn't even realize I lost it until much later.
So just to be clear, did you have your phone with you at all the day that Coach Brackman was killed?
No, I have no clue where it went.
Ms. Becker, the prosecution has brought up some Ring camera videos from the day of Mr. Brackman's murder. Do you see them marked as Exhibits 12 on the stand?
Yes.
All right. The intruder in those videos, do they look like you at all?
Yeah, but I mean, tons of people look like that. I'm obviously not saying Blair Rollins did it or anything, but she looks like that too.
You mentioned Blair Rollins. Really briefly, could you tell me a little bit more about her?
Well, again, I'm not accusing her of anything, but she's kind of a weird kid. She was friends with Alex Fuentes, and I saw them on March 5th at the Fry Shack together right before my phone went missing.
Okay. Avery, I just have one more question for you. Did you kill Mr. Brackman?
No, absolutely not.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Attorney Vora. Attorney Slavin, do you have any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please, when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Ms. Becker. My name is Liam Slavin. I'll be conducting your cross. Please limit your questions to the shortest possible length. Now, were you at the school on the day of March 6th, 2020?
No, because I went with Taylor to go look for my phone.
Where were you exactly?
We were at the Fry Shack in the mall trying to find my phone.
So let me get this straight. You were saying that you ditched your classes on the day of the murder of Mr. Brackman?
Yes, to go look for my phone with Taylor Perkins.
And did you alert anyone to your whereabouts on that day?
Yes, Taylor Perkins.
So you only have one person who can testify to your whereabouts on the day of March 6th, is that correct?
Yes, I suppose.
And that person is Taylor Perkins.
Right.
Now, Ms. Becker, is Miss Perkins your best friend?
I don't know if I'd call her my best friend.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
I believe this is foundational, and I do believe it's relevant, so I'll allow it. Please proceed.
Thank you. I will continue on, Ms. Becker. Now, earlier you said you were searching for your phone and that Mr. Cifuentes stole it. Is that correct?
I never said that he stole it. I was just implying that he was there at the Fry Shack with us the day it went missing.
And you claim that Mrs. Fuentes falsified text messages that you sent her. Is this correct?
It's certainly possible.
And Ms. Becker, on line 142 of your witness statement, you say, quote, "And I have no idea what those text messages might have said because I never sent them." Is this correct?
If it's in my witness statement, then it must be correct, yes.
But Ms. Becker, you believe that Mrs. Fuentes was using these text messages to frame you for trashing Mr. Brackman's house. Is this correct?
It's certainly a possibility, like I said before.
So, Ms. Becker, how exactly do you know what was on those text messages, considering that you claim to have both lost your phone and never seen them since you never sent them?
Well, my lawyers showed me them, and they are aware of them.
Thank you, Ms. Becker. Now let's talk about your relationship with the victim. Would you agree that you and Mr. Brackman did not get along?
I would say our relationship was a little bit complicated, but yeah.
Did you call Mr. Brackman, quote, the worst attorney in the state?
I might have said that, yes.
And did you call him, quote, a lousy attorney?
Yes, but I was really upset.
And did you, in a fit of anger, vandalize Mr. Brackman's vehicle with the words "Worst Attorney Award"?
Yes, but that was only because Mr. Brackman was criticizing me in front of the whole team.
Now, Your Honor, do I have permission to share my screen to show a copy of Ms. Becker's witness statement for the purpose of her to read part of it out loud?
What is the rationale for her needing to read something out loud?
I just simply would like her to read it, but I can quote it if necessary.
Any objection, Ms. Vora?
Attorney Slavin, if you could just quote it, I think that would be easier. I'm sure Ms. Becker will cooperate.
All right, let me pull up the quote so I have it exactly. Now, Ms. Becker, did you say on line 101 of your witness state, quote, "That made me madder. I went home and told my mom that Mr. Brackman got on me again for no good reason, and I had walked out of practice. I didn't tell her what I had done to his car. I said he followed me out of practice and got even madder at me and kicked me off the team. I told her I would get back at him if it was the last thing I did.
Yes, if it's in my witness statement, then I must have said it.
All right, thank you, Ms. Becker. There are no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Brief redirect, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Ms. Becker, be honest, did you like Mr. Brackman?
Yeah, I thought he was a good coach. I mean, we had our differences, but he was a fantastic coach.
Okay. Ms. Becker, but did you think that Mr. Brackman was a good lawyer?
I don't think he was the best lawyer. He was just pretty arrogant, if you ask me.
I see. But even despite those differences, would you kill him?
Of course I would never kill him. You know, he was still a good coach because he got us to a level where we were competitive, and I would never do anything to hurt anyone.
Yeah. Okay, I understand. Thank you, Ms. Becker.
Attorney Slavin, any recross?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Does the defense have any further witnesses that they'd like to put on at this time?
Your Honor, at this time, the defense would like to call up Taylor Perkins to the stand.
Good afternoon or evening, Ms. Perkins. I know you've been sworn in. Please proceed when you're ready.
Sorry, Your Honor. Ms. Perkins, please state your name for the jury, spelling the last for the record.
My name is Taylor Perkins, Perkins.
And what is your relationship with the defendant, Miss Avery Becker?
Well, Avery and I attended Colorado High School last year, and she was basically like one of my best friends, and we did mock trial together. I probably wouldn't have done it without her, but I really enjoyed doing it with her. And personally, I thought that she was a really great, calm and reasonable person, pretty level-headed.
And you mentioned mock trial. How well did you know Ms. Becker as a member?
Let me just tell you, she was a flawless attorney. She was amazing. She didn't put in as much work as other people, but she was still way better than them.
And how well did you know the victim, Mr. Brackman?
Well, he was our coach for mock trial. He wasn't the best coach. He wasn't the best lawyer either, but he sometimes made poor choices for the team. He treated Avery really unfairly, though. He was always disrespecting her and the awards and just how she was as a lawyer in general.
Are you aware of any disagreements between Mr. Brackman and Ms. Becker?
Yeah, actually, Brackman demoted Avery to B team senior year because of his weird grudge against her that he had for no reason. And then I stepped down in a show of support because obviously, since Avery was the best lawyer on the team, we weren't going to go anywhere without her being on the team.
And Ms. Teresa, I'm going to stop you for 1 minute, attorney. I just want to make sure that Attorney Branson, are you able to hear and communicate with us? Okay, I just wanted to make sure Attorney Branson, can you hear us? It looks like I cannot hear you, unfortunately. So we'll give you a minute to fix it. I just want to make sure that should you have any objections that you can be heard.
Your Honor, Mr. Branson can indeed hear you. He's trying to fix his call so that you guys can hear him, but he can't hear the proceeding.
Wonderful. We'll give him just a minute so he can contact us again.
Thank you.
I apologize for the interruption. Just give us 1 moment here to get the technical glitches ironed out.
Your Honor, can you hear me now?
I can hear you indeed, Attorney Branson. Thank you. Attorney Teresa, when you're ready, please continue.
All right. I'll continue I'll restate the last question. Were you aware of any disagreement between Mr. Brackman and Ms. Becker?
Well, yeah, actually, Brackman demoted Avery to B team senior year because of his weird grudge against her that he had for no reason. And then I stepped down in a show of support because since Avery was definitely the best lawyer on the team, we weren't going to go anywhere without her.
And what happened after that disagreement?
I mean, of course, Avery retaliated. No one likes being disrespected and their achievements being dragged through the dirt. So, well, she defaced the coach's Porsche. Nothing more, just to freak the coach out. But then he went and kicked her off the team, which was completely unreasonable because of everything else he had already done to her.
And what did you do to help Miss Becker after the fallout?
Well, Avery went and did apologize to Coach. Well, at least she tried to, but he completely dismissed her without even listening. In fact, the team loved Avery, so they also tried to help her out. And we texted them and discussed it with other teammates, and they were all on board with how unfair it was.
Everyone on the team in agreement with helping Miss Becker back?
Well, they said so, but not really. Alex Cifuentes was the only person who didn't like Avery because even though she agreed with the unfairness, she was clearly insincere. It was clear on her face.
And how do you know Miss Cifuentes?
And well, we were on the same mock trial team, and I saw her around school, but we didn't really talk much.
And when did Miss Becker typically interact with Miss Cifuentes?
Well, they only really interacted over mock trial stuff. Like I said, they weren't really friends. They didn't really have any sort of relationship. But Alex was always jealous of Avery. She was always jealous because Avery was much better at mock trial than Alex was. And even though Alex put in the work, Avery was still way better. And I know Alex says that she was Avery's best friend, but that's a complete lie. Alex is just twistingly jealous of Avery. And also, I'm one of Avery's best friends, I would know.
And going back to the team meeting, where did all of you meet up?
Well, we actually met up at the Fry Shack, and that was the day before the murder.
Did anything unusual happen there?
Well, everyone, including Alex Cifuentes, showed up, but then Alex tried helping. But it frustrated Avery, and he tried to rile her up, so she walked away from the situation because she always tries to be the bigger person, and she left her phone on the table. Her iPhone is literally like her kidney. She would never go anywhere without that, which just shows how mad Alex made her.
And what happened after that?
Well, I wanted to punch Alex, but I never actually did because Mia and Avery both always want to be the bigger people. So we left and we decided to go to a mall. Actually, Avery never picked up her phone before we left. She just grabbed me instead, I guess. I'm basically like her second kidney.
And when did you go back for Ms. Becker's phone?
Well, we didn't actually realize it was missing until she came to pick me up the next day, which was March 6th. So rather than go to school because we didn't have any major assignments or tests due that day, we spent the whole day retracing our steps trying to find her phone.
And where did you search for it?
Literally everywhere. We went to all the stores in the mall. We went to the Fry Shack where we last saw it, but we could not find it. I called and texted her a whole bunch of times because I thought maybe we could hear it or something along the lines of that. But we never found it, and Alex probably took it, Alex Cifuentes.
And earlier you mentioned Avery had an iPhone. Why didn't you just use the iPhone location app?
Well, I have an Android phone, so I didn't actually know you could do anything like that, which is kind of cool, but Avery was so panicked because, like I said, that iPhone is like her second kidney, so she forgot that you could just access it on the web.
And what did you both do when you couldn't find Miss Becker's phone?
Well, we went back later in the day to the Fry Shack because we wanted to check with the new staff, with the new shift. But then we saw the rest of the mock trial team there and they should have been in practice. Apparently, Coach Brackman never showed up that day.
When did you find out what happened to the victim?
I can't remember exactly, but just with everybody else, Avery and I found out much later that Coach had actually been killed and we were so confused. We had no idea what happened.
On a separate note, do you know Blair Rollins?
I do, and Alex Cifuentes was best friends with Blair Rollins. They were like really tight, and Blair was kind of weird, and she was the one kid in school who is probably a sociopath or would grow up to be a hitman, and Blair wasn't actually at school the day of the murder.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Your Honor, I'm simply trying to create context for the next couple questions.
I will overrule that objection.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Moving on, what was Blair's relationship to Mr. Brackman?
Well, Blair hated Coach because he lost a case that sent Roland's dad to prison for murder, life in prison. And in fact, now that I think about it, Blair being involved makes a lot of sense.
From what you observed?
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
Response?
Your Honor, under Rule 702, this opinion is rationally based on the witness's perception.
I tend to agree that it is, in this case, speculation. As such, I'm going to sustain that objection and ask you to move on.
Thank you, Judge.
And from what you observed, Ms. Perkins, what was Alex's relationship with Blair?
Well, since Alex and Blair were like best friends, if Blair's involved in this, maybe Alex took Avery's phone, made some fake messages, and then Avery gave it to Blair, and then Alex gave it to Blair. Okay, that's a little bit of a stretch, but it's fully plausible. I might be watching too much Midsummer Murders on Netflix.
And finally, Ms. Perkins, why are you testifying today?
And it's mostly because I was with Avery the whole day. I know nothing about Brackman's actual murder, but also, why would Avery kill him over such a small club like mock trial? Even though Avery is like my best friend, I know she would never lie about something like this, not when someone's life is at stake.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Examination, Attorney Branson.
Yes, Your Honor, there is. Okay, and before we begin, Ms. Perkins, please refrain from verbose answers. A simple yes or no will suffice. And to begin, let's start with your and Avery's relationship with Coach Brackman. Is that all right? Okay. Both you and Avery disliked Coach Brackman, correct?
That is not true. We thought he was a mediocre coach at best.
Okay. In fact, you went far enough to state that, quote, I thought Brackman was a mediocre coach and an even more mediocre lawyer, correct?
That is what I said in my last question. We thought he was a mediocre coach, but that does not mean we disliked him.
Okay. Do you agree then that at least you lacked respect for your coach, correct?
That we thought he was mediocre. That's not the same as not having respect. You should have respect for everybody.
Okay, well, I'll move on. Avery didn't treat Coach Brackman well, correct?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Avery did not treat Coach Brackman well, correct?
Avery took his critiques of her work and put it into her mock trial, but Coach Brackman just always disrespected all of her achievements and credentials. He dragged her credentials through the mud every single time, and he just
Okay, thank you, Ms. Perkins. That made Avery extremely upset with Coach Brackman, correct?
Wouldn't you be upset if somebody tried to drag your credentials through the dirt?
Yes, but this led her to purposely instigate conflict with Coach Brackman, correct?
I mean, he had a grudge against her, so I guess you could say that.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, you and Avery were best friends, correct?
Yeah, I would say
Okay.
that.
So you heavily valued her relationship with you, correct?
I mean, it was a mutual relationship. We are friends.
Yes, but you valued this relationship.
Yeah, I liked her as a friend.
Okay. You also joined and later left the mock trial team because of Avery, correct?
I mean, Avery introduced me and it was a fun way for us to spend time together after school. So yes, and also I stepped down to show support for her and also against Brackman being mean to her and just dragging her through the dirt.
Okay, thank you. But this allows us to conclude that you go to great lengths for your friend, the defendant, correct?
As a friend, I would.
Okay. Thank you.
Let me finish.
Let's move on to the events preceding the murder of Coach Brackman. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
According to your report, Avery came back to mock trial extremely unprepared, hurting your team and making Coach Brackman angry, correct?
Yes, but like I said, Avery was amazing at mock trial and could make things up on the fly. Amazing.
Okay, and after Avery's poor preparation, she was demoted, correct?
She was demoted, but since she was the best lawyer on the team, she definitely had to be on the A team if we wanted to win anything.
And after you quit, that forced Brackman to take Avery back, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And then they did very well at the regional tournament. However, afterward, they got into another conflict, correct?
Yeah, they did really well just because of Avery, like I said.
Okay, and Avery defaced the hood afterwards of Mr. Brackman's Porsche 911 Carrera with a permanent marker?
Well, she even told me that she thought it was an expo marker, which is something that washes right off. And also she apologized and wanted to pay for it by getting a job and scrubbing the car.
Okay, but what did she write on the hood of Mr. Brackman's car?
Worst attorney award, but that doesn't mean that
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Mr. Branson, could you hear that that was a hearsay objection?
Yes, I could, and Your Honor, I will move on. So going back to the vandalism, we know that this completely ruined the paint job of Mr. Brackman's car, correct?
But like I said, she apologized, she wanted to pay for it, and she offered to scrub it. She offered to rectify her mistake in every way.
Okay, but Avery consequently was kicked off the A team again, correct?
Yes, that's true.
Okay, and as we both know, COVID canceled the state tournament, and afterwards you and Avery planned a way to get back onto the team. She approached Coach Brackman after practice, however, she was told to leave again.
She approached Coach Brackman in order to apologize.
Okay, but he wouldn't listen to her, correct?
Yeah, which was completely unreasonable.
Afterwards, you and Avery went to the Fry Shack, where surprisingly you found the rest of the team.
We did. That was
Okay,
not on the
and at the Fry Shack, Avery got frustrated and stormed off, correct?
Avery walked away from the situation.
Objection, Your Honor. This has not happened at the place. This is wrong timing.
Yeah.
What? Mr. Branson, do you have a response to that?
Can you, Counselor, please state your objection again?
I would like to object on relevance because the day that you're speaking of was different than the day of the actual murder.
Yes, it's a different day of the natural murder, but Judge, I'm just establishing foundation because I'm establishing that Avery was extremely upset with Coach Brackman by storming off.
Well, that might be correct, but we are talking about two different dates. I will allow you to address that issue on redirect if necessary. As such, as far as the relevance, I am going to go ahead and overrule that objection. Please proceed.
Thank you. And lastly, moving on to Mrs. Becker's phone. You claim that she left her phone at the table, correct?
I think so.
Okay, and you also stated that it was extremely weird for Avery to leave anywhere without her phone, correct?
Yeah, like I said, it was like her kidney.
Okay, that'll be all for today, Your Honor.
Thank you, Attorney Branson. I appreciate it. Ms. Teresa, do you have any redirect you would like?
A brief redirect, Your Honor.
Please do.
All right, Miss Perkins, what did you say what day that Miss Becker stormed off?
The day that Miss Becker stormed off was March 5th.
So it wasn't March 6th?
No, it was not March 6th.
And just a final question, you are truthful. Are you truthful in your testimony today?
Yes, I was sworn in and I will uphold that.
And would you lie for a best friend?
No, absolutely not. Not when someone's life is at stake.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Attorney. Mr. Branson.
There will be no recross. Thank you.
Thank you. This witness is excused. Ms. Perkins, you may be excused. Does the defense have any further witnesses they wish to put on at this time?
Yes, the defense would like to call Professor Blake Van Owen to the stand. And can I request a quick time check?
Indeed, and it looks like Attorney Goyne, if you are attempting to have video on, it looks like your video is off. I don't know if that is something you can correct or not. There you go.
Sorry, I forgot to turn on.
You have 10 minutes and 36 seconds left.
Okay, thank you.
Please proceed when you're ready.
Okay. What is your name, first and last spelling, last for the court?
Sure. My name is Professor Blake Van Owen, VANOWEN.
And what do you do for a living?
I'm a private investigator and professor.
And what's your education then?
I have a master's degree in criminal justice from Ashford University. That was about in 2015. I also have a BA in English from University of Colorado Boulder in 2005.
And how did you start in law enforcement?
I initially served as a member of the Aurora Police Department for a short period in 2005.
And what else have you done besides police work?
I've also worked as a school resource officer, private security guard, as well as now a private investigator, and I teach a class at CU Denver.
Could you tell us a little bit more about that class that you teach?
Sure. I started teaching a class on police procedures as an adjunct faculty member at Community College of the Rockies. And then after I received my degree, I started teaching a course of these practices and social justice, which I have taught for about 5 years now.
And what's your previous experience as an expert?
I've been accepted as a defense expert in the U.S. District Courts of Colorado, Kansas, and Arizona, as well as state courts for Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska, and New Mexico. I've been accepted by various courts as an expert in crime scene reconstruction. That was about 8 times that I've done that. Cell tower analyses 5 times, and in general police investigation tactics 12 times, as well as consulting on more than 100 cases.
And what areas have you testified in?
Sure, I've been admitted as an expert in the areas of police practices, use of force, false arrest, forensic evidence techniques, crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general police investigation tactics.
Your Honor, under Rule 702, I would like to admit Professor Van Owen as an expert in police practices, forensic evidence techniques, crime scene investigation, cell tower analysis, and general police investigation tactics due to her abundance of experience, knowledge, and her education in these areas.
Response, Attorney Dana?
Yes, actually. Good afternoon, Professor. My name is Mackenzie Dana, and I will be conducting your cross and your voir dire at this time. So let's begin. You are no longer a part of the Aurora Police Department, correct?
No, I left that position in about 2005.
A yes or no will suffice. And if I recall, there was an incident where you injured a young woman before you left, yes?
Yes, so
Objection, Your Honor, relevant.
Ms. Dana, I will remind you that at this point, we're just looking for a voir dire in regards to the offering of this witness as an expert witness. So if you could please direct your questions strictly to whether or not she is an expert or should be qualified by this court as an expert.
Of course. So Professor Van Owen, you haven't been in the police force for years now, correct?
No, but I've also been teaching a class in police procedures, so I'm very well aware of how the police functions.
So therefore, you are not familiar with current police practices, especially considering you were released for misusing those practices.
I would say that I am aware of the current practices as I am a professor.
Your Honor, the prosecution objects to Professor Van Owen being admitted as an expert in police tactics, as she has not been intimately involved with them for many years.
Thank you, Attorney Dana. Well, I do agree that she has not been involved in police tactics for a number of years. I've not heard any reason that means she's not an expert. I also do find that she has been admitted as an expert in many state and federal courts, and this court chooses to not overrule those courts and will indeed admit her as an expert into this court for the things that she was proffered at this time. Attorney Goin, please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. So how did you prepare for today's trial?
I primarily reviewed the reports authored by Detective Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak.
And what's your expert opinion of Detective Markowitz's report?
Unfortunately, Detective Markowitz is a victim of the police system as a whole. He has not been trained properly how to investigate crimes, and he's probably overworked, so she was rushed and missed a lot of information.
And what do you think about Kyle Kuzak's findings?
I think she was strongly influenced by Detective Markowitz, and therefore I find difficulties in determining the veracity of the evidence that she's demonstrated today.
The prosecution mentioned some scuff marks on the floor of Mackenzie Braxton's residence. What do they mean to this trial?
They don't mean anything. You can't carbon date scuff marks on wood flooring, so they can't indicate when those scuff marks were created and if they were created during a scuffle on March 6th. I think they said it themselves that it was possible.
And then they also talked about the knife used in the murder. What does that knife show us in this trial?
Again, I find difficulty in determining the veracity of the knife evidence, as it doesn't match the style, brand, or dimension of any other knife in the block. Therefore, it points to maybe potential premeditation, in that the intruder could have possibly brought it with them. And that thus doesn't match the theory presented by Detective Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak.
And then how do you believe Mr. Brackman was killed?
Upon reviewing materials and autopsy records, I believe that someone came up behind him while he was at a seated position and stabbed down into his back.
And why is this?
For a variety of reasons. So first of all, we can look at the ring video footage and look at the intruder's height and build. We have no way of determining. There's a lot of ways that it would be difficult to stab in front. So it's a different motion. And I'm so sorry that you get like this weird motion from Zoom. But if it were to occur the way that the prosecution says, the assailant would have to be in front of Mr. Brackman and stab down into his chest over his shoulder. And this can't be proven because of the height of the intruder. It's difficult to determine whether or not they could possibly do that. And also so it's hard to do that based off of the height of the intruder as well. There's no bruises on the body that we can demonstrate that there could have been a scuffle.
And what was the position of the knife that Mr. Brackman was stabbed with?
According to the autopsy report, the knife was stabbed into the scapula and the aorta of the heart, I believe. So it was kind of like, if you're a movie buff, the shower scene in Psycho with this downward motion with the blade of the knife facing outwards.
And then how could the intruder have gotten behind Mr. Brackman without him knowing?
A lot of individuals pointed to the Ring doorbell as a way that Mr. Brackman could have been notified of the intruder. However, we have no way of knowing whether or not Mr. Brackman received those notifications, let alone saw those notifications. Again, the police didn't do their job.
And did you prepare a report in this case?
Yes, I did.
And is this a normal business practice for you?
Yes, I do this for almost all of my cases.
Could you direct your attention to Exhibit 20?
Sure.
Is this a clear and accurate copy of the report that you provided?
Yes,
in this
it
case?
is.
Your Honor, I move to admit what is previously marked as Exhibit 20 into evidence.
Objection.
Response.
Yes, that this document is hearsay because it is an out-of-court document being used to establish truth.
Attorney Goin, do you have a response to that?
Yes, Your Honor. This is a normal business practice done by the expert witness. Therefore, it falls under a hearsay objection in Rule 703.
Well, I do agree at this point. I don't believe there's enough foundation laid to establish that this is a business record exception. As such, I'm going to go ahead and sustain that objection and not at this point admit exhibit number 20 into the record.
Yes, Your Honor, I can lay a little bit more foundation. In your line of work, Professor Van Owen, have you noticed that this is a common practice for attorneys to do?
Not attorneys, private investigators. And yes, we generally prepare expert reports of our findings in order to prepare for trial. I also prepared this report by myself. So I know the veracity of the evidence there.
Your Honor, I move to admit what is previously marked as Exhibit 20 into evidence.
Attorney Dana?
Still an objection. I do not believe that sufficient foundation has been laid, as that was only one question.
Well, I tend to disagree as far as a foundation in regards to relevance or business records. This court normally does not allow reports from experts to be entered into the record because it really is hearsay or hearsay within hearsay. And as such, I'm going to go ahead and sustain that objection because everything that's in this report, I've already heard from the expert as she stated in court here. Attorney Goin, please.
Yes, Your Honor. So the prosecution mentioned some cell phone towers. Could you explain how those work?
I can. I don't think that the prosecution fully explained how cell data analysis works. it does not provide GPS location. It can demonstrate potentially where a cell phone was in about a 38-mile area, but it cannot definitively place a cell phone. As well, these kinds of records cannot demonstrate who was in possession of the cell phone, what was being sent to the cell phone, and if that was received.
And can this data tell us anything in this case?
It really doesn't tell us much. Again, it's not GPS location. It demonstrates that the cell phone connected to a cell tower. Can't prove where in the area of the cell tower that cell phone was located.
Do you believe the phone could have been lost?
Yes, from Miss Becker and Miss Perkins, they testified to looking for it. So there's the theory that the phone was lost the day prior, and thus Miss Becker wasn't even in possession of the cell phone.
Who could have taken it?
I have looked into a possible suspect of Blair Rollins in this case.
And is there any information pointing to Mr. Rollins?
Blair Rollins is about approximately the same height and build of Miss Becker, and also wasn't at school the day of Mr. Brackman's murder. Blair Rollins' father was also represented by Mr. Brackman, and when Mr. Brackman didn't win, Jonathan Rollins was sent to jail.
Did you ever obtain a recording of Jonathan Rollins?
Yes, I did.
How'd you get this information?
So I obtained a recording during one of the proceedings of Jonathan Rollins' court case, so it was a public record.
Your Honor, I'd like to play a brief recording for the court.
Any objection, Ms. Dana?
Yes, I have an objection based on relevancy because this recording of it is of Blair Rollins' dad and not Blair Rollins himself.
I will overrule that objection at this time. I would like to hear this recording, and then we can revisit that objection if necessary. Attorney Goyen?
Yes, Your Honor. My co-counsel, there we go. Exhibit 22, co-counsel. It doesn't seem like that recording is playing.
Attorney Goyen, do you happen to have the transcript of the words that was said so you can just repeat that to the court?
Let's try again.
Yeah.
My apologies.
It's okay. I think I can just say them. Jonathan Rollins says here that he will get Mr. Bracken back for losing the trial. And how does this point to Blair Rollins?
I believe that Blair Rollins could have committed this crime as, revenge for Blair Rollins' father going to jail.
And what about the text conversation messages possibly sent to Mr. Alex Fuentes?
There's no way to determine the veracity of these texts, and therefore I don't think that they're actually true.
And one final question. Did Avery Becker murder Mackenzie Brackman?
No, we cannot say with certainty today.
Thank you, Your Honor. That'll be it.
Thank you. Attorney Dana, cross-examination.
Of course. Good afternoon once again, Professor Van Owen. So let's begin your cross. Please limit your questions to the shortest length possible. I would like to first draw your attention to the case itself, and let's focus on the crime scene reconstruction reports. You know the expert witness the prosecution brought in today, Kyle Kuzak, correct?
Yes, I do.
And you looked over his crime scene reconstruction report, correct?
Yes.
And you stated that it was clear that Mr. Kuzak's findings were influenced by Detective Markowitz, yes?
Yes.
Do you have any physical evidence to back up this claim?
So you can kind of look at the reports. Kyle Kuzak didn't do any independent investigation here and presumably probably assumed the same suspect that Detective Markowitz did.
Okay, furthermore, you mentioned that Detective Markowitz planted the idea of Ms. Becker as a suspect in Mr. Kuzak's mind.
Yes.
You go on to say that due to this notion, any evidence tied to a breaking and entering would be seen as more important than any other inconsistent evidence.
Yes.
Do you have a complete and verified crime scene reconstruction report to contradict the one of Mr. Kuzak?
That's actually not my job to reconstruct crime scenes. I can look at how Ms. Kuzak reconstructed her crime scene, but I do know that those reconstructions seem to be false.
Okay, great.
However, I can kind of explain how I think that the crime scene went, if you would like.
That will not be necessary. Thank you, though. So let's move on. Let's talk about the knife. You would agree that the knife, exhibit number 5, is not the same style as the other knives in the block?
No, they're not the same style. Sorry, that was unclear.
No worries. And there was a missing spot in the knife block, correct?
There was.
Wouldn't it follow that the knife may have replaced a broken knife spot in that block?
I'm not sure. It could have been. I don't think that it's that probable.
Okay, great. So let's look at another possibility then. You would agree that there was a knife drawer with several different styles of knives in it, yes?
Yes.
So you would then agree that it is very likely that the knife came from this drawer of assorted knives?
It could have, but that could have been verified by investigating what else Mr. Brockman owned and purchased. However, that was never verified, and we do not know that the knife came from within Mr. Brockman's home.
But it is a possibility it came from this drawer as well, yes?
It could have, but it also could have come from the suspect's home.
Great. So based on your previous answers, we can all come to the conclusion that it is actually very probable that the knife came from inside the house, especially because we have seen 2 different possibilities, correct?
Not very probable.
Okay, well, let's look more at the stabbing itself. You say that the defendant is too small to have stabbed Brockman where he was stabbed, yes?
I think that it would have been incredibly difficult, and therefore it's less likely.
So yes,
and this
is based on the Ring videos, correct?
Yes.
But isn't it true that Ring videos are known for disproportionately portraying people?
Yes, so again, I would have investigated this more, tried to determine whether or not that claim would have been accurate. But again, the police didn't do their job.
Great. So is it possible that the defendant was distorted in the Ring video?
Possible.
Okay, so let's move on then. Now, you were admitted as an expert. What exactly were you admitted as?
Not sure exactly what it was. It was forensic evidence, crime scene analysis, police practices.
So you are not an expert in cell phone data, data recovery, or forensic data analysis?
I think I was entered as an expert there.
You were entered as an expert in cell phone tower analysis, not in the other areas I mentioned, correct?
I don't believe so, but I also think that they could be in a similar scope.
So would you agree, you would agree that you are not qualified to speak about all of these important aspects of cell phone technology?
Which important aspects are you referring to?
Cell phone data, data recovery, or forensic data analysis, which you were not admitted as an expert in.
I think I can at least reasonably testify to police procedures, and if Detective Markowitz used those in his police investigation, then I can discuss those.
Okay, great. Well, let's look more specifically at the cell tower records, which does fall under your expertise. You would agree that Detective Markowitz only investigating the records for the period of time before the murder is irresponsible, correct?
Irresponsible and dangerous, as we're all here in court today.
However, wouldn't you agree that this is because the phone lost connection to the cell towers due to it being turned off?
It could have been, yes.
So there was no actual way for Detective Markowitz to investigate further beyond the time he did?
Well, it was actually possible. She could have investigated days beforehand, hours beforehand, minutes beforehand, to see how the cell phone moved to the sector that it was then left.
Okay, that is good. Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. Attorney Goin, any redirect?
No, Your Honor, no redirect.
Thank you. Saying there's no redirect, I will obviously dispose of any recross in this matter. Does the defense have any further witnesses they wish to give us? Seeing that there are not, I will ask the courtroom whether they were prepared to proceed on to closing arguments. At this time, I'll ask you, prosecution, to proceed with a closing argument when you're prepared and ready.
Your Honor, before I begin, I have one question. Seeing as I'm giving the prosecution closing argument today, can I allow for some time for a rebuttal at the end after the defense gives their closing statement?
Not only can you, I highly encourage you to. So please tell us how much time you would like to reserve at the end, so that we may reserve that if you would like.
Based off of this should be about 2.5 minutes. So whatever excess minutes, we'll go to that.
If the timekeeper will please note that, I would appreciate that. Attorney Slavin, when you're prepared.
All right, I will begin. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we are gathered here to seek justice. This quest for justice, as well as our whole legal system, was built by the great Greek philosophers of old. In light of this, let us return to the roots of both justice and truth and turn to our Greek ancestors. In 441 BC, Sophocles wrote the play Antigone. Within this play, we see the destructive seeds of pride grow into the wicked vines of murder. Much can be learned about murder, pride, and human nature, but the connection between pride and murder is a clear one. A connection that spans thousands of years from 441 BC to 2020 AD. As you have seen throughout this trial, Avery Becker stands accused of murder, a murder that was born out of pride. Unfortunately, a literary connection is not enough to convict Ms. Becker. We, the prosecution, have accepted our burden of proof and will lay out the facts of this case to prove beyond a reasonable doubt the guilt of Avery Becker. Today's case rests upon 3 charges: criminal mischief, second-degree burglary, and first-degree murder. The testimonies of Detective Markowitz, Alex Cifuentes, and Taylor Perkins all point to Ms. Becker having committed criminal mischief against Mackenzie Brackman. Her history of brash violence and mock trial pride led her to commit this act. The cross-examination of Avery Becker shows that she harbored hatred and criminal malice towards Mr. Brackman. In addition to this, she had a history of attacking his property. So if Ms. Becker committed criminal mischief against Mr. Brackman while also breaking unlawfully into his residency, then she committed second-degree burglary. The evidence and testimony provided by Detective Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak clearly show that Ms. Becker broke, entered, and remained unlawfully while also committing criminal mischief. The ring video entered by the detective in combination with the testimony provided by Kyle Kuzak point to this fact. And the testimony of Mr. Cifuentes lays out the motive. Therefore, Avery Becker committed second-degree burglary. Now, it is a known fact that Mackenzie Brackman died on March 6th after someone broke into his residency. Since Ms. Becker is guilty of the previous 2 charges and the victim died while she was committing these crimes, then she is guilty of first-degree murder. Now, in accordance with the jury instructions, we, the prosecution, have fulfilled our burden of proof. Therefore, good gentlemen and ladies of the jury, Avery Becker is guilty of criminal mischief, second-degree burglary, and first-degree murder. Thank you.
Does the defense wish to make a rebuttal closing argument at this time?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
May it please the court, opposing counsel, members of the jury. We are here today because Mr. Mackenzie Brackman, Colorado High School's late mock trial coach, suffered an unfortunate fate. He became victim of a burglary gone bad, and the guilty party, supposedly my client, Ms. Avery Becker. The prosecution may spin references to Greek stories, but this is reality, not fiction. I would like to take a moment to remind you of one fact, a fact that the prosecution is unable to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. This case has an unidentifiable culprit. Today you heard from 3 witnesses on the defense. First, Ms. Avery Becker, the innocent high school student who testified today that mock trial was her life. But unfortunately, due to Brackman's prejudices against her, he demoted his star attorney. Admittedly, she was upset, as anyone would be, and made the mistake of defacing his expensive car, which she repents immensely. Members of the jury, she is simply human, a teenager who may occasionally have been late, but not enough to receive the treatment that she did, nor the accusations currently against her. You also heard from Taylor Perkins, who corroborated Ms. Becker's alibi. She testified to Ms. Becker's reasonable personality and all of the team happenings. Her testimony included in vivid detail where and why the 2 friends spent the day of the murder searching for Ms. Becker's phone, the phone that was likely taken the night before at the Fry Shack. Ms. Perkins also spoke of Sophie's vendetta against Miss Becker, how Alex and Blair Rollins are close friends, and that Blair wasn't even at school the day of the murder. And lastly, you heard from the testimony of Ms. Blake Van Owen, an expert in police practices, forensic evidence, crime scene reconstruction, and cell tower analysis. In her work during this case, she discovered that the cell tower data presented by the prosecution is misunderstood and unreliable, just like the quality of work from the prosecution's experts in this case. Additionally, she brought to light Jonathan Rollins' case that Mr. Brackman failed to win and convicted that man to a lifetime of jail. His child, Blair Rollins, may very well have taken the revenge that Jonathan promised to in the presented audio clip, or said in the prosecution's beloved Antigone, like father, like daughter, passionate and wild. Today, the prosecution has also presented 3 witnesses. Alex Cifuentes herself spoke today. They claim to be Avery's best friend, Avery's family, but is here today testifying against Ms. Becker, evidence to her jealousy and insecurity. We also heard from the first prosecution expert, Ms. Kyle Kuzak, who posed the same unverified theory as that of Detective Markowitz's. And despite her claiming that Ms. Becker had the same build as the perpetrator, her own counsel crossed my defense expert on the fact that such videos show distorted images. Kuzak also claimed to have an unbiased approach, yet her skills cannot prove with 100% certainty nor proof that the defendant is guilty in this case. Their second expert, Detective Jordan Markowitz, themselves testified to having an unbiased approach in this case as well, despite having previous negative encounters with the victim prior to this case. Additionally, she herself said the perpetrator's clothes with the mask, gloves, and hoodie covered any identifiable qualities, and that due to Blair Rollins' proximity to a cell tower, it is possible that Blair could have been in possession of Ms. Becker's phone. This case has a significant lack of concrete, solid evidence, none of which even directly point to my client, from the culprit having just a general build to no DNA or fingerprints found at the crime scene. Ms. Becker was apprehended on speculation, when in fact evidence points to others far more guilty than my client, namely Blair Rollins and Alex Cifuentes, both of whom had the motive of hate, which resulted in a victim and a framed innocent student. Today, my co-counsel and I have represented the defendant, who has been accused on 2 counts, murder in the first degree and second-degree burglary with criminal mischief. The prosecution has attempted to prove every element, including this second element that stipulates that my client committed the crime charged at the place charged on the day charged. But today, evidence has shown that Ms. Becker wasn't even remotely near the scene of the crime on March 6th, thus invalidating even the possibility of all the other elements occurring. Today, members of the jury, you have met Ms. Becker, a sweet, normal, innocent student. Murder is a heavy charge, and to be guilty, Avery would have had to break into her coach's house and kill him in cold blood. But members of the jury, I would like to ask you one thing. Why would my client even commit the accused crimes? You were all in high school once, and after being admitted into college, would you jeopardize your future over mock trial? Putting it simply, Ms. Becker had no motive and no relationship to the victim other than simply being a mock trial student. But Blair and Alex, on the other hand, did. You were all teenagers once. You were rash and unreasonable and may occasionally make mistakes. But you would never kill someone over mock trial, and neither would my client, Miss Avery Becker. Your jury instructions stipulate that for every element of the accused crimes, after taking into account the lack of evidence in this case, that we have shown that the prosecution has failed to prove any one or more of the elements of each crime beyond a reasonable doubt, then we implore you to find the defendant Avery Becker is not guilty. Thank you.
Judge Katz, you're on mute.
Thank you very much. Attorney Slavin, you reserved some time for rebuttal. Would you like to use that at this time?
Yes, Your Honor. I believe I have around 2 minutes and 10 seconds. Is this correct, timekeeper?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, thank you. Then I will begin. Let me first begin by stating what today's case is about, which is the guilt of Avery Becker, not about Blair Rollins or her father. The defense had the opportunity to call Blair Rollins or her father to the stand, but they failed to. Today's case is about Avery Becker and her actions on March 6th. Now let's move on to some key details of today's case. The testimony of Alex Cifuentes, Taylor Perkins, and Avery Becker point to Miss Becker being impulsive and aggressive. This falls directly in line with the evidence laid out by Detective Jordan Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak. In addition to this, we can see that the defense in their closing statement did not dispute the line of reasoning that I laid out earlier in my own closing argument. They did not dispute that Ms. Becker, through her impulsive action and aggressive action, committed a criminal mischief against Mr. Brackman. In addition to this criminal mischief, she committed second-degree burglary when she broke into her house. The ring video of the detective clearly shows this. And finally, while she was breaking in with criminal malice, she killed Mackenzie Brackman. Therefore, good ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we can only find Miss Avery Becker guilty of all three charges. She is guilty of criminal mischief, second-degree burglary, and first-degree murder. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Slavin. This court shall stand in recess and consider this case submitted while the jury takes their time in order to deliberate this case. I ask the participants to please relax. Give us a few minutes for the scoring panel to fill out their paperwork. And then once everybody has filled out their paperwork, if you would like to hear, I'm sure the scoring panel would love to give a couple words of feedback to you to help out for the remainder of this competition. So I will ask these scoring panelists to take your time, fill out the sheets. Once you've submitted it, if I could ask you to turn your camera on so we know that once I believe we have 4 scoring panelists. Once everybody has turned the camera on, we can proceed in giving some comments. Thank you. And from what I can see, we're just waiting for, it looks like Kristen. Once you're prepared, take your time. I'm not trying to rush you. Once you're prepared, flip that camera on, and then we'll go ahead and start talking.
Thanks. Sorry, it'll be just a minute. I took handwritten notes, so they're a little bit.
No, it's wonderful. I just wanted to make sure that you weren't waiting for me to say something. Take your time. I see a camera on. So if we can, since I saw Rebecca, I saw your camera come on first. If you wouldn't mind just briefly introducing yourself, and then if you have any comments that you can give to attorneys, witnesses, everybody who participated today, that would be wonderful if you're willing to share.
Absolutely. First of all, I'm sure I'm speaking for everybody when I say that was very impressive. You guys did a ton of work to get where you are. That was very clear. I always love watching this mock trial and being almost more impressed with high school students than I sometimes am with attorneys that I practice with all the time. I practice with some great attorneys. I'm not saying that, but you guys did a great job. I work for the county attorney's office in Adams County. I've been there for about 20 years. So I am a courtroom attorney. And again, just really want to say how great you all did. Couple of comments about the witnesses. You guys were amazing. Very believable. Don't kind of fights too hard on cross-examination. Kind of just, it's the attorney's time to be in the spotlight. So let the attorney be in the spotlight. The job of your attorney is to fix any problems that come up. So, they know if you said yes to something, but you really wanted to say yes, but let them ask you the but, and they will do that because you guys are prepared and you know what you're doing. The attorneys did a great job. Wanted to speak directly. What's the name of the attorney who did the opening? Ms. Bora. I loved it when you're like, come on, you were all in high school. It really spoke, I think, really well to the jury. Also, you have such a calm presentation, which really I thought went over very well. And I think you all did that. No attorneys got riled up, which is great and hard to do when you're getting kind of answers that you don't want to get. I don't want to take all the time, but another comment I wanted to make was it was great I could feel that you were all not overly scripted. You were able to kind of go with the flow and be flexible. And sometimes you don't see that in mock trials. Sometimes you see that the questions are written and you're going to go with them. And you guys all did a great job of just actually flowing with the trial. Very impressive job. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Amber, you came up next, or at least you're next on my screen. So if you wouldn't mind. Sure, not a problem. Can you all hear me? I know I can hear you.
Okay, well, we'll go with it. I am also, in varying degrees, a trial attorney. I started my first 10 years in California. I'm still licensed in California. I'm licensed here in Colorado, of course, as well. And I will say this, every single one of you, I was like other counsel here, I was very impressed with all of your performances. I actually was in your shoes. I am a graduate of Wheatridge High School. I participated in mock trial all 4 years, so I know exactly the nervousness that I'm sure you all faced going into this first round. You weren't sure how to deal with the other side, and I think you all handled it very, very well. I will point out a couple things that stood out to me. I thought that in the context of both the opening and closing, I really liked how the prosecution kind of kept their theme. You had this Greek story about Antigone and everything like that, and you kept it from the beginning to end. It kind of felt nice and coherent to me, and I liked that. On the defense side, you did a really great job of, first of all, the opening, you focused on the burden of proof, and you brought to the forefront the fact that it's beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a huge thing in a criminal trial like this. And then on the closing side, you did a great job of adapting to your opponent and referencing the Greek fictions and contrasting that with reality. So I really liked that as well. In my mind, standout witnesses on both sides. I thought that Alex Cifuentes did a great job. You were very believable, very casual and understandable. And I thought that the expert Van Owen, I thought, again, you were just very believable. You were very matter of fact in what you were doing. And so I thought both of you stood out for me. And then just one standout thing I noticed on the defense side, when you were directing your witnesses, in particular the direct of Perkins, I thought that you did a really great job of letting Perkins tell the story. You kind of just ask just enough question to get her moving along, which is exactly what you're supposed to do on the direct. And I thought that the direct of Markowitz was a standout for me as well. I don't know, I wrote down, I quoted you, it sounds kind of complicated when you were talking about the cell phone. And that was kind of a little standout moment for me where I was like, I don't know, I was paying attention to what you were saying right there, but just because it sounded relatable to me, like you were like, well, let's tell this jury what's going on here. So I don't want to take up any more time, but I wanted to throw those out. I thought you guys all did great, and good luck to all of you.
Thanks, Amber. Kendra.
Hi, yeah, everyone, this is the first time I've judged a mock trial, so I thought everyone did a very, very impressive job, and big kudos. As a fairly young practicing attorney, I completely understand how difficult it is and how nervous you get. I think I liked the theme. That was really good, really consistent. I think people did a good job on cross of trying to limit the questions to yes or no answers. Witnesses, like some of the other panelists said, tend to ramble, and it's really important to narrow down yes or no. I thought you guys did a good job with that. I thought the defense closing was good to kind of go against the theme of the prosecution, and I think defense did a really good job of humanizing the defendant, which is important in this kind of case to show that she is a person and she just made a mistake. So, but I thought everyone did a really good job, and I was very impressed with you all.
Thanks. And Kristen.
Hi, so I work at the Public Defender's Office in Adams County up in Brighton, Colorado. So this is, I would say, squarely my wheelhouse as a defense and trial attorney. And really just to echo what other panelists have said, you guys did a really fabulous job. I know that you've put in a lot of work, and it very, very clearly shows. I really don't have much additional information to add. I think everyone else kind of touched on it, but really everyone's tone was right. I know it's really difficult over Zoom. There were some technical difficulties, which we certainly don't fault anyone for. And really everyone had really good recovery with that, you know, repeating questions or even having to leave and come back. And so I thought that was impressive. No one seemed to be flustered by that. And, you know, in real life, you're not going to have some of these same, well, right now we're all appearing via web, but for when trials go back to normal, you know, something always comes up, maybe you forget to print a picture or something as an exhibit. And so the skills that you're using right now and building are things that are going to come up in real life if you do end up, you know, working in the practice of law. Yeah, so just really, really good job, everyone. You should be proud of yourselves.
Thanks, Kristen. I know if you're anything like me when I used to do this, or when I do trials now, you guys probably haven't eaten all day long because you were too nervous. So you're probably starving. So I'll definitely make this quick because I know you just want to get to dinner and be done here. This stinks. And I don't mean your presentation. Your presentation was excellent. But the fact that we're not sitting in a real courtroom right now really stinks. I think a lot of the fun, a lot of the scared times that you have are walking into that courtroom. It stinks, but it's a reality. The fact is this is reality. And I say that because, heck, I just finished a 2-day trial that was just like this, where I spent 10 hours a day sitting on Zoom with the judge and everybody else sitting on Zoom. And we had technology issues, and we had issues with evidence, and we had all the same problems you guys had. But obviously, this was real life. These are real peoples whose lives or fortunes were on the line. I think that is what makes a lawyer a lawyer. That's what makes mock court or moot court different than speech and debate. It's how you guys adapt to the circumstances. And I think you did an excellent job to it. And kind of keeping with that theme, I wanted to talk about something that kind of came up, the iPhone question, the question about the blue versus the green. And the reason I'm bringing that up is I'll be honest here, I was deathly afraid that somebody was going to make an unfair extrapolation objection, that they were going to say, oh, that's an unfair extrapolation. That's not in the record, whether it's blue or green. I tell you, I was deathly afraid because to me, and I'm just saying me, I hate that objection. I think it's the absolute worst thing that you could ever do in moot court. Your job as an attorney is to deal with the circumstances, okay? I mean that with Zoom, I mean that with whether it's blue or green or whatever. Your job is to stay in character and decide how you're gonna deal with it. I promise you, definitely the four real attorneys here, but everybody else definitely disagreed with half, if not all of my rulings. Thought, how would he sustain that? Or how would he overrule that? That's insane. That's real life. But again, it doesn't matter what I say. It doesn't matter what any judge says. What matters is how you deal with that. I thought you did a great job, but I just remind you to stay in character and determine how you're going to deal with it. If it's a witness who's being a pain, then deal with it. And that's really what we're judging you on. I will point out in cross-examination, everybody, and this is true of everybody, between each question, I heard, I see, is this correct? Okay, correct. And great, yes, okay, thank you. And then each time there was a question, you felt like as an attorney that you had to say something. What's your name? Oh, great. And all I will say is that's not necessary. It's not necessary to say correct or thank you or great or whatever. It is okay to say your name is, your address is, and just leave it there. You don't have to say your name is John, correct? You could just say your name is John. That is all I have to say. I thought you guys did an excellent job. I hope that you're all able to get a little sleep tonight because I know that you start again tomorrow. I hope that you don't try to rewrite your entire case because it's not worth it. It's not going to work. You guys have done an excellent job. Hopefully you can tweak a little thing here and there, but you did great. I will ask that our courtroom monitor let us know once they have officially received all the ballots before we let anybody go, so that we don't accidentally leave you without one of these score sheets. So I will ask everybody to just kind of hang out there for just a minute or two until we're sure that everything is okay, and then I'll let you guys go and enjoy your dinner. But again, excellent job, everybody.